5:10. So just changing that item.
Actually, it says May 21st, but I will change it. to-
Okay, whatever it was, okay. Okay. Yeah, rather than May 21st, you're right, right.
Thank you.
Okay. The other item has to do with a quote contributed to me after the discussion on the alcohol policy. I raised the question about would the vision statement be revisited? And I think, Dr. Joe, you said something to the effect that it would be reviewed at the strategic planning committee meeting. And I guess I must have said this because Vicki would not have put this in unless I said this. But it says Trustee Erickson stated he did not wish to attend Monday's meeting. That gives the impression that I'm not interested in strategic planning. So I would request that that particular quote be deleted from the minutes.
You have to do that, but you did say.
I know I did. And I'm sure that you probably have it in an audio that can tell me that. But it was not in any way that I wasn't interested in participating in strategic planning. It's just that I was unable to attend the next meeting that was going to be coming.
Understood.
All right.
Thank you. Are there any other additions or corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I need a couple of motions.
A motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve as changed.
Second.
Bill seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. I guess I'd like to make a request, and this is something that Vicki asked me to do, and the board, is that if you have any corrections, to go ahead and make them to her privately, so that she can correct them before we get here. That's kind of something we've done as a matter of courtesy. So I'm not striking your hand, Dawn, but, I don't remember actually what you said that you
You're not
didn't-
listening to me.
I don't think you probably made a great impression on us that you didn't want to come, so, thank you. Reports to the board, LCCC reports. I think SGA is not here for the summer. Staff Senate, Kevin Yarborough, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Trustees, President Schaefer. Usually, I get up here and there's usually a party or two to announce for the staff or whatever, and then I'm done with it. Tonight, I have a few things that we do want to bring forward. So, first of all, and Rob Van Cleve, if you can help me clarify this, this is my understanding. The last business meeting a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Schaefer had proposed maybe less business meetings, or the idea that faculty and staff senate and student government also not necessarily needing to attend unless we were requested to attend. Remember, we were discussing that. And Van Cleve had an excellent answer, and I was sitting there next to him shaking my head. But after that, I wanted to make sure that I clarify why I was shaking my head, and it was with his answer, but I think there may have been a little bit of confusion. We're not shaking our head that we should have as many meetings as we've been having. That's up to you folks. But what it does mean is staff, senate, the faculty, senate, and the student government will continue to attend these meetings, whether they're once a quarter, twice a month, whatever. Because when our constituents come to us and ask us, well, I saw this occurred in the board meeting, or this was approved during the board meeting, it helps us answer those questions because we've been here to hear the process and understand how things evolve. And so, yes, we want to continue to attend these meetings, but not saying yes that we still need to have meetings every month. That's still for Dr. Schaefer and you folks to figure out. Did you agree with me, Rob?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I did understand that. I think we
Okay.
got the impression that you want to be here.
We want to be here,
Yes.
but not that we need to keep having as many meetings. That's whatever.
Okay.
You folks figure out.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've been up here, so that's maybe one of the reasons I got a few things to pass on. We did have our ice cream social for the employees during the spring break, and I wanted to thank Chairperson Erickson and Du Bois for coming out and hanging out with the staff for a little bit. I know I left a little bit early, so if there was any other board members that came out, I appreciate you coming out and spending some time with the staff. Coming up here pretty quick is the employee picnic. That's for all employees, to include the faculty, the board, everybody. That's June 7th out at Holiday Park. I noticed on the last page of tonight's agenda, the calendar, that wasn't listed. And per Dr. Schaefer, that is a campus closure at 11:30. So, and from here on out, that will always be the trend. We established this last fall with the academic calendar, so always the first Friday in June will be the employee picnic. So that's, instead of bouncing around every year, we've established that.
And it's a good one.
So, yeah, but now that's a snow day, and so the kiddos are in school, and so obviously I got a few emails about changing the date, but it's too late in the game for that. And obviously there was a lot of scheduled snafus with everybody to include the board meetings too. So, so we're just going to roll with that as best we can. We will have some kiddo games for the non-school age. And if you show up in your school age, you probably got some explaining to do. So, me and, well, not just me, the staff senate and Dr. Schaefer, we've been talking on and off for the last couple of months about the roles of the staff senate. The faculty is faculty, and even though they're in different divisions, they tend to have the same concerns or issues or changes or policies and procedures and stuff across the board. Staff, on the other hand, does not. Those things are handled by division. If Chairperson Mosier had asked me, like he asked Jeff Smittle, what are the goals of the staff, we could probably figure out something like better customer service for our students and our peers and stuff. But the reality is those goals are established by the divisions. So we're a little different when it comes to that. Most of the time, if there are issues or procedural changes and concerns within the staff, they belong within the divisions. So a staff senate president very seldom is going to come up here to the board and say, we got an issue or there's a concern, because these things are being handled by the VPs or the deans and so forth down the chain. Like me and Dr. Schaefer, when we were talking last week, I said, I see faculty like this, but staff is like this. And we all have chains. And unfortunately, the staff a few years ago selected a staff senate president who spent 22 years in the military, understands chains, and understands handling problems at the lowest level. There are times when issues do come forward, and unfortunately for some of those folks in the staff, I've directed those problems right back where they came from, because they weren't the role of the staff senate to be involved in supervisory issues or dean issues or BP issues. But at the same note, then I think sometimes the staff believes, don't take your problem to the Senate because they won't address it, they won't run it up. But we do look at them, we do scrutinize them, but a lot of times things do end up going back where they belong, and so you need to handle that within your department. But I wanted you to know that even though I come up here and talk about ice cream social and employee picnics coming up and things like that that the staff does put on, there are things that we do. Last fall, the staff was kind of teetering around a little bit with some morale issues versus, or on the issues of what's an exempt staff member and a non-exempt staff member. How come this staff person needs to make up time and this one don't, and stuff like that. And those can begin to affect your morale a little bit because we think that somebody's being treated better. But that's not the case. But we don't bring that stuff to the Board of Trustees and say, oh, we have a morale problem and we have exempt and non-exempt concerns and everything else. We talked to Dr. Schaefer, we went to HR, and they came out and met with us and explained those differences. And these are federal hiring practices of how you get categorized and stuff like that, and that means some people are on a clock and some people aren't. But they went into details to explain that stuff. But I just wanted to give you an example. There are things out there that we're doing, and if you see those things in the minutes, you know, by all means, ask us, but most of the time, I don't know if I've ever been asked a question for the last couple of years that I've been up here, but that's okay. This spring, there was some concerns with communication with a new payroll system that's going to be getting implemented here in this year. The communications concerns were especially with the non-exempt staff, and these are your hourly folks, and how that was going to affect them, because the time clock's going to impact a little bit on how they get paid. Again, we talked to Dr. Schaefer, we've worked with Harry, and we've worked with Carol, and we're communicating the best we can with the staff and making sure that they're involved with the process, so that everybody knows and understands how this new system's going to work and how it's going to affect some folks. So there are things that we are doing besides just setting up parties. We have a rap for being known as the party committee, but that's not the case. But along with that, a lot of us that are on Staff Senate, we've been on it for quite a while. And it should be the opportunity to give this opportunity to some other staff folks. But right now, we're not seeing other staff folks that are interested, or very few. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that, I think, is based off of maybe the staff does not consider the Senate a legitimate organization. So we're looking at some things. We've gotten with Ann. We have a survey coming out in a couple of weeks to go to the staff to see what they think about the Senate, what they think the roles of the Senate should be. And we're going to work on that over the summer and figure out what our role is, if there is one. I may come to you in August or September and say there will no longer be a staff Senate. To see, you know, if there's not an interest, if they don't see this as a legitimate group. Because, again, most of the time, if there's concerns or issues and they want to use the Senate as the voice, the reality is they need to work within their own divisions to take care of those things. We will be a voice and look into concerns that affect the staff as a majority or a whole, but not when it comes down to supervisory or dean issues, or and like I said, with the VPs. That's their roles. That's what they've been hired to do. So last month we should have had elections within the Senate. All the current officers have agreed to stay on until August over the summer, again, to sort out this, see where we are, you know, who we are and stuff like that. So just wanted to get you up to speed with that. The other thing that I've kind of debated back and forth if I wanted to bring it up, but I guess I should, because it was addressed at the last board meeting, but I'm not exactly sure it was answered the way I thought it probably should have been. And this goes back to those list of questions for HR. Sorry, Lisa.
Didn't mean to get you all upset.
That woke her up.
P for priority. List of questions that Chairperson Kelty had for HR. Now look, I'm not going to poke at HR. I like HR. I get along with those folks. We've worked together on some things and stuff like that. But one of the questions asked that is when folks come to HR with issues, those issues are not ever responded back or gotten back very well to.
You're saying they don't respond to you?
Right. I'm not using the exact words from the questions, but Dr. Kelty, am I kind of on the right?
You're close enough that everybody ought to know what you're talking about.
Okay. The answer that was given to the fact that anytime staff or anybody, employees out here, go to them for beneficiary changes, pay fixes, whatever, and stuff like that, that they do the best they can to take care of those things right away. And if I may speak for the staff and on my own experience too, no issues. No issues there. I've done beneficiary changes. They take care of that stuff, no problems. But I think Dr. Kilty's question was addressing when there are HR issues that they should be looking into, involving employees, supervisory issues and things like that. I'm hearing it over and over and over. HR has never gotten back with me or followed up on an employee complaint. The answer to that question, was a good one, and it was a correct one. But I thought it missed the point, and I'm asking Dr. Kilty, is that where your question was going?
My question did involve personnel issues, and I don't know that I want to go into it any further than that, but I know from my own experience, when I was leaving the college here, I had questions of HR and they never got back to me. And I finally got someone in payroll to answer my questions for me. So,
Right, and I'm not privy, and we're not going to discuss those issues that are out there. I kind of know a little bit here and there and stuff like that, because people they'll talk about it, but those aren't things that should be brought up here. But I wanted to check that because I felt like Dr. Kilty was looking for a different answer than what came out, because it's the same concern that a lot of staff people do have. It has nothing to do with them taking care of the benefits and blah, blah, so forth and so on.
Well, I think I asked the question, Kevin, what was their policy for return calls? I asked Alex that when he was at the podium, and I think that kind of meshed with that. And he didn't really know what I was talking about, because I think maybe the college has a 24-hour callback period or something when a call is made to a certain office. I think I heard that one time in student services, if someone called, that they had a policy to call back within 24 hours. So that was my question.
So it's bad news. It's just not good. I don't like bringing that up, but I just wanted to clarify that. And since it was kind of brought up last week, I thought I would feed in a little bit. I didn't feel like their answer, not that it was a bad one, but I think the question was actually a little bit different than what they came back with an answer. So it may be something that needs to be looked into, because there's some staff folks in particular, because I'm here to represent them, that are upset that if they take concerns up, that they're not getting any feedback in return. Okay.
Sure.
Any questions for me after all that?
Ed?
With regards to the Flex Tech building project and the student services facility, I did read somewhere some question about the understanding of the need for it. I was wondering if you had a sense among staff if we could do more as trustees, as a board, or some way help the folks inside the institution better understand the need for those two facilities. It is, and maybe that's really the question I'm looking for. Do you get a sense that there are people who are saying, why are you doing this? And then I'm saying, if so, what might we do?
In regards to the Flex Tech, no, I haven't heard any feedback with that. There's feedback all over the place when it comes to student services. The feedback typically is positive, okay? We need to expand the current area that especially student services is in now. It's not good for students, potential students. It's crampy workspace, unorganized workspace for the folks that work down there. I think if I do hear complaints about it, I think it's more just various people's opinions on maybe where the best way to do these changes are. And so definitely being involved with the staff to hear those concerns, maybe somebody out there may have a better idea of how to transition from what we are and what we have to what we're going to. As far as these are not things that we should be doing, I'm not hearing that at all.
Yeah, and maybe I need to make that clear. It wasn't so much that we shouldn't be doing it, but that people weren't sure they understood why. It wasn't criticism. And so I was looking for how can we better inform or assist in that process to understand the need, purpose.
I'm not prepared to answer the question, but I don't want to sound like Department of Justice person that I don't know. But,
Thank goodness.
definitely, as plans evolve and stuff like that, if we take these back and get feedback from the rest of the staff, you hit a key point there, and it's not just the Flex Tech or the Student Services work area in the new building for that. There's a lot of whys, and I think Dr. Schaefer had an open session with the staff, and that was a lot of stuff that was discussed. There's a lot of changes going on right now. That doesn't mean anything bad, but we definitely need to be communicated with a little bit, and that was brought to him because we need to understand the whys all the way down to the folks that are making things happen and things move, so at least we understand what we're doing and why. We may not always agree with it, but we need to understand, me and my analogies, we like to, if we're going to play a new piece of music, we'd like at least to have the sheet of music to play from. We may not like it, but we'll play it. We'll play it. But that's in general. I don't know if that answers
It
specifically to those, but there's a lot of moving parts that go on outside of this room, the president's office, the VP's office and stuff, and there's a lot of things that tie from one department to another, and there's a lot of staff that are involved with those processes, and one piece is trying to make that move and happen, and maybe the other parts aren't aware of what's going on. Creates a traffic jam, and a lot of, some folks can get upset. So a lot of changes happening fast, but being involved in, we've talked about those things too, making sure that things, get down to everybody the best we can. So
Appreciate that.
any other questions?
Anyone have a question?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I don't actually have a question of Kevin, but bringing up the issue of HR, I looked through the letter that was sent out with the agenda, and I wanted to ask one further question. This is why I like to be at these meetings, because an answer usually involves yet another question. And this is the business of passive versus active recruitment. And they talked about active recruitment. That's why I want it clarified, because I had a feeling this is what this would entail. Active recruitment of them going out and soliciting applications from various people. If you've got your HR group doing that, how do you keep it from looking like you're advantaging certain persons in a hiring process and making it look like it's actually fair for everyone who volunteered themselves?
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, I don't know if that's not the way that I interpreted the explanation of what they're doing, and certainly from their practice, it's not soliciting specific individuals. It's using more active means to take non-traditional routes to generate a quality pool, and one of the areas that I think was identified was using social media from more of an active approach versus the traditional, we'll put an advertisement in the paper and hope people will actually come to us. Identifying professional organizations and seeking postings on their websites, getting the opening out. We've done targeted postcards to community colleges in the West for specific positions. And so that's my interpretation of what they're doing in regards to active. I don't think they're calling Kevin Kilty up to see if he wants to apply for this position.
What are you pointing at?
I'm pointing at the, at the explanation they gave us, which says that we are reaching out to specific individuals. And so they've misstated that? They've misspoke?
Knowing what I know about the practices we're using, we're not reaching out to specific individuals. Now, where we are doing it, and this again is interpretation. So, for example, with some of the vice presidents, associate vice president positions, and some of those other ones, we've actually done targeted postcard mailings about the opportunity to academic affairs officers across the West and community colleges, and have built a pretty robust database of these individuals. So we are targeting or reaching out to those specific individuals. The idea is to spread the word amongst those demographics and groups that would be most likely to be candidates for us.
Okay, one more question. In response to my question about why not put pay scale into these advertisements, they came back and said we do, except that faculty is another issue. So, if faculty is another issue, are we doing that or are we not? Are we advertising pay ranges when we're looking for faculty, or don't we?
Now, Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, my understanding is we put links, if we don't put a specific range within the vacancy announcement, we put links to the faculty pay schedule, and that's what that comment referenced, the complexity of any faculty position to say that you're going to get paid somewhere between $20,000 and $70,000. Maybe a little bit, 28,000, sorry. I mean, which I think is where we actually start. It's easier for us to actually publish the pay schedule, link them to that, and then they can sort of self-identify where they might fall on that prescriptive placement measure. And that's what they've done.
Okay, no more questions on that topic. Thanks.
Any other questions? What I'm really seeing here that I like is that you're communicating the concerns of the staff, Senate, and your people under you, and I think we need to know those things. But it also makes me know that you're talking to Joe and the people that you need to talk to. So,
We do. Me and you've been, riding this ride for quite a while, and it was a few years ago that the staff was like, why is the board in the staff's business? The answer to that is because we allowed the board into it.
and we care about this college,
And totally
we
understand that.
like to be there.
So there's been a hesitation, and I'll just say on my part as a Senate president, it's not that we're trying to keep things behind you. We're going to HR, we're going to Carol on the payroll. We talked to Dr. Schaefer about this stuff. So we're communicating things up and through. But I've been a little hesitant to ever let you guys get labeled, why are you in the staff's business again? Because honestly, the staff doesn't feel like that's you guys' role. At a time, it was. There was some problems. And those problems have gone away. So doesn't mean everybody's 100% happy. They never will. We're dealing with people, dealing with great people, but we're still dealing with people. But most of those issues can still be handled along this wall here, along with Jose. I guess he's playing hooky. So it's not keeping anything. I just want the board to be aware that there are things out there that we are doing. Sometimes I feel silly sometimes. I come up here and talk about, well, we're putting on a chili cook-off, putting on an ice cream social. These are morale things that we do for the staff. These are things that we do to put money into a scholarship fund that we share with Edie Miller and her family. These are things that we enjoy doing. The staff retreat, a professional development day for the staff. These are things that we do, but they come across as a party committee. But there's other things that we also look into, and we work with those that are involved with those areas to get things corrected or get better explanations and stuff like that. So I just wanted to bring that forward tonight. We are doing more than just assembling parties, because look at me. I'm not a party organizer. It doesn't suit my personality at all. So,
Well, thank you so much, and you're funny on top of it all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, we'll have Faculty Senate. Rob?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm missing the boat. Faculty Senate has no parties at all. So maybe I can change that this year. We have not met, nor do we intend to meet this summer since the last board meeting. I would just like to say how much I look forward to this next year, not only as Faculty Senate President, but attending board meetings and working with you. And I would want you to know that Faculty Senate is 100% working towards the betterment of the college and working towards the betterment of our students. And we certainly will let you know if there's anything we feel needs to be done towards that end. And I would also extend an invitation to you to please let me know if there's anything we as a Faculty Senate can do for you as far as information or any other endeavors or efforts that we can put forth to help you. We would be more than willing to walk together with you in whatever endeavors we might feel is beneficial to our students. So again, I look forward to the next year and no report.
Thank you, and
Do you have any questions
congratulations.
for me? Did
you have a question, Trustee Mosier?
Now that we've had a run through it, we'll try it again with faculty.
Okay.
Is there anything we can do, or are there anything additionally that would help in terms of support for both the Flex Tech and the Student Services facility?
Boy, nothing comes to mind, Ed.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
LCCEA.
We do have occasional parties, and they're off campus, so. We just
You
had
can
one
invite
a couple
us.
weeks ago, but not as many as Kevin does, so. And I don't like organizing them any more than you do, so. A lot of things about, Madam Chair and trustees and President Schaefer, a lot of things we do in LCCEA involve personnel and issues that I can't come to a board meeting and talk about, but we do visit monthly with Dr. Schaefer and the appropriate people, so. Our role is somewhat different than these other two roles that you'll hear here. So often I'll stand up here and say I have nothing to report because I'm not going to talk about personnel issues or anything like that, at a public meeting for obvious reasons.
Sure.
So I do have some good news. We have a new president, Dr. Mohammed Shakad, who's our engineering and physics instructor, will be taking over, and this will be my last meeting, and he'll be standing in this position from now on. So we introduced him at the meeting with Dr. Schaefer today, and he'll be taking over the helm, and I'll be standing on as past president, but he'll be doing the reports from now on. So I have nothing further to say other than that, and I think it's a great selection. We'll be moving forward.
Thank you, Les, for serving. And welcome.
Thanks, Les.
Mohammed. Are there any questions? More questions? No questions? Thank you. Next, we have the President's report. Dr. Schaefer?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, I'll pick up where we sort of left off in the loose conversation we were having at dinner regarding the Wyoming Complete College America update. And I'll try not to repeat what we discussed, but just to bring context back to this larger conversation about the completion agenda here in Wyoming and Complete College America. I think I've given you some of the background, so I apologize if this is redundant, but Wyoming became the 32nd state to join the Alliance of States in Complete College America here a few months back. For those of you that don't know, Complete College America, it's a national organization. It's funded by some of the most high-profile foundations that are focusing on reform in education, higher education, completion, all that good stuff, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Lumina Foundation, if you will. And it essentially has one goal within its mission, and that is to increase the number of Americans with a high-quality certificate or degree, higher education certificate degree. And that's its singular mission. That's the work that it's working on. When we joined, it required that the governor made a commitment for the state of Wyoming. And they committed us to three things. The first thing was that as a state, we would set completion goals for higher education, to set goals to have more citizens in Wyoming with a college credential. The second one was to develop action plans and move key policy levers. And I made that comment earlier. Policy is a major, major focus for the Complete College America agenda. Policy is the domain of the trustees. Now, there is some legislation overlap, there's some rules overlap, but much of what they're focusing on outside of the funding element deals with policy that's really within your domain and within your realm. And then the last one is to report and collect common measures of performance. They say and they set performance measures that each state has to collect and submit and report. So if you've ever been out to the Complete College America website and you've looked at any of their data, those are the measures, the data that they're asking that each state has to do. So we've signed on and we've agreed to do that. As we discussed at dinner, one of the first pieces was to form a Complete College America steering committee. I think that's what we're calling it, or advisory committee. It's comprised of trustees, commissioners, staff from various representations at the colleges. We're looking at adding legislators and sort of the broad representation from the constituency. Not all community colleges are represented on that steering committee, although there's active discussion and activities at the many councils associated with the Wyoming Community College Commission and other places. And so people are involved in the conversation, although we don't have direct representation. So our committee has been formed. The colleges, I believe, have completed, compiled, and submitted the performance data, the measurement data, to the state. At this point, the state is reviewing those before they are submitted, I believe, to Complete College America. But that element of actually collecting those data and getting them together is moving along quite well. And then the team will be meeting here, I think it's May 29th and 30th, and that's a preparatory meeting for a summer Complete College America Academy. That summer academy is really intended to take the data that we've submitted, talk about the current needs, and start to develop a draft action plan for the state of Wyoming in regards to setting our completion goals. What are we going to work on? What are we going to do? That's really the next big step, is to get that plan in place. Again, some of the questions that I've raised and continue to raise is, whose plan is it? Who's actually driving the effort? Are we sure that when we say this is our plan and these are the things we're going to do, the people driving it have the authority or the ability to do it? There's some, I would say, lack of clarity in that regard, but I think that the emphasis and the focus is right. What I can tell you, based on what I know that Complete College America is focused on and what the conversation at the state level has sort of been, the plan's probably going to focus on things that shouldn't be a big surprise to us. It's going to focus on developmental education. It's one of the major areas of emphasis for Complete College America. The president, Stan Jones, has actually been very vocal and actually pushing some radical approaches. He was one of the first that said, just get rid of it. Not going to make any difference in terms of the numbers if you just get rid of it. In fact, you might actually have more if you just mainstream them into college level coursework. That was a lot of, really powerful rhetoric to get people to say, wait a minute, and start reacting, I think. But developmental education. For Wyoming, that's going to focus predominantly on, I believe, the placement mechanism, the way we actually place students into developmental or college level coursework, and then curriculum changes and designs, and there's quite a few conversations going on right now about that. The second one is performance funding, and one of the main reasons I believe that the commission is so focused on performance funding is it is sort of it's a rebirth, a policy du jour, if you will, across higher education organizations. There's merit behind it, but time and time again since the 70s, states, policymakers, and academic leaders have figured out it is incredibly difficult to do. But that one will be a primary component, I believe. Advising is another topic that everybody is talking about, the things we've been working on and talking about. LCCC, they're right in line with what's happening on the national scale and really where Complete College America is. And then program redesign and curriculum redesign. A lot of emphasis on developing clear, coherent pathways to programs, limiting options, starting to look at the curriculum and saying, do we need as many of those options as we have, and are they actually confusing matters? And so those are the things that at least are being discussed, and I believe will end up in some iteration of a state plan. Again, how that state plan fits into the commission's strategic plan, how it may feed or drive your strategic plan as we start working on that, time will tell. But the momentum at least is there. I think the devil's in the details, and that's sort of where we're trying to muddle through right now. But I'll keep you abreast of where we're going with that, and certainly Trustee Mosier and other folks who are staying connected to the conversation will be able to keep you updated as well. So I'll pause there, Madam Chair, if there's any questions.
Questions? Trustee Mosier?
Could you enlighten us a little bit regarding the metrics that may or may not be in play and how those might be determined as to which ones will be used?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, I will do my best. I don't know how much enlightening I can do, but at least I can try to put some light in the shadows. Complete College America as an initiative has predefined metrics, and just going through the ones that Anne Marie put together for us and actually collected the data, it's comprehensive, and they range anywhere from measures, traditional measures on retention and persistent rates, measures dealing with time to completion, the frequency at which students complete developmental sequences, the number of credits towards completion. There's really a series. Many of them tie with what's in our LCCC key indicators of performance, or key performance indicators. There's considerable conversation, though, at the Wyoming Community College Commission level about creating measures for Wyoming. And where I get a little bit confused, if Complete College America has already said these are the measures, and if those are the measures that were going to be the foundation of the state's plan, then what are the other measures that would be the Wyoming measure for? And the best I've been able to tell is perhaps Wyoming-specific measures may be a more streamlined approach that the commission can use for key elements like performance funding. So the chair of the commission, Larry Atwell, had asked the commissioners and the colleges to submit, if they had to pick 5 measures that they would use to measure performance, I believe, not necessarily to fund off of or to do that, what would those 5 be? And I think most of the colleges have submitted, and not surprisingly, they're sort of the same things. They're different iterations of graduation or completion. Some include transfer, some don't. Retention, whether it's fall to spring, fall to fall. The completion of developmental ed or placement in developmental ed, or completion of the first college level course in mathematics, course completion. There's some great consistency. That's never the issue. The issue is in how you specifically define the methodology behind calculating those data. Do you include only first-time, full-time students, or do you include all students? What about transfer students? And when do you track them? What course are you looking at? Do you include transfer? Do you not include transfer? And do you include transfer for every student? The list goes on and on and on. And so if you've taken the time, like I think most of you have done, to read through our handbook on performance indicators, and you look at how specific we had to get with the statistics behind those, that's the work we need to do as a state, and I think that'll be the more problematic approach. Then tying it to performance funding and all of those things, there's still quite a bit of work to do there. So I wonder if we will actually define and create measures that will be different than what we're already submitting to Complete College America as a state. I don't know, and I don't think that we're clear as a state on what we need there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the other thing I want to just bring you up to date on are some current and pending facilities renovations and things. We are in the summer months, and I like to tell people that higher education is sort of like reverse farming. Farmers work all summer, and then they take all winter to fix everything they broke in the summertime. Higher education, we work all winter, and then we take the time in the summer to get everything fixed that we broke over the year. So summertime for us is an opportunity for us to do some renovations. If you recall, at your January retreat, we talked a little bit about some of the renovations with the CTE building expansion, the campus gateways, and some of those things. And I mentioned a few others that we are working on and now we'll be heading into. The big one is really the renovation, if you will, of what I think of as sort of the boot or the U-shape, where student services currently in through the fire pit area, into the student lounge, and up into the area that is part of the commons, all the way to where campus living and learning is. We're going to be doing some renovations along all of those areas for 3 primary reasons. One of them is we want to improve student spaces. The students have actually been setting aside, or have had a portion of the fees that they pay for facilities set aside specifically for the student lounge. And it's time that we update the student lounge for them, so they've been involved in some design and architectural processes. Another one is to improve services to our students. We're planning on a new building here in a few years, and everything is moving in that direction and looking very positive. But there are things we simply have to do even within the next 3 years to make sure that we're bringing the level of service that we need to our students. And so there's some work going on there. And then creating the appropriate space for the employees we have to do the work that they are doing. So each of these areas, student services, the bookstore, the student lounge, and what's happening up in the commons area, they're all tied together because if we can actually handle them all as renovations, we can accomplish all three of those goals. The piece that I want to bring up and just talk about tonight, though, is specifically with the bookstore. So as we started having this conversation, what we wanted to do is move the bookstore into a transition area. And free up some of that space for student services so we can get the recruiters and the admissions people, actually have them have offices on campus instead of working out of their homes. When we looked at that, we started having a broader conversation about the current bookstore, the current relationship with Nebraska Books or NEBO, how it's provided. And one of the things that we feel pretty strongly about is that the bookstores of yesteryear are a thing of the past, and bookstores are really transforming into something different. One of the things we need to do is actually create a store environment that is more conducive to helping students find the most affordable and convenient access to their books. And so we've started to explore and are moving towards more of a fulfillment center type of a bookstore when it comes to the actual books. We need to be competitive with the rental market. We need to be competitive with the online providers. We need to do that. Our current relationship with Nebraska Books hasn't really allowed us to get there. But we also have more of this, what's being called a student store experience that needs to happen. And so as we've been looking at transitioning the bookstore out of student services and setting up a temporary space, which right now is tentatively planned where Campus Living and Learning is next to the Emporium. We would just reclaim that and expand the Emporium area in there. When we started looking at that, it begged the question of, okay, who's going to help us get to the bookstore of the future? And do we feel confident that Nebraska Books can do that? And ultimately, no. And so one of the things that we'll move forward with is actually notifying them and giving them a 60-day notice that we're going to discontinue the contract with Nebraska Books. The contract states we have to give them 60 days notice, and so we want to do that. At the same time, we've been having conversations with Sodexo about expanding their contract relationship with the college and taking their concept of a student store and implementing it here at the college, and they're willing both to come forward with some financial incentives to do the construction and some of the renovations. They've provided a proposal for a temporary solution within the expansion of the Emporium, but really I think all of our focus is really on the bookstore we want to build and design in the new University Student Center. So we've started conversations with them and are intending on moving forward with developing those conversations. When we get to formal proposals and costs and contracts and all that, they'll come to you as a board to look at, to study, to ask questions, and ultimately to approve. But I just wanted to bring you up to speed that moving away from our relationship with Nebraska Books to expanding a relationship with Sodexo is a significant thing that we're considering and in conversation with. And I just wanted you as a board to be sort of apprised of that, and then we'll keep you apprised as we move down that road. So with that, I'd pause for any questions there as well.
Trustee Kilty?
With regard to the textbooks, you said you want to be cost competitive with other sellers of textbooks and so forth, and I don't see how you'll ever compete with Half.com, Amazon, the people who sell international editions of textbooks. And I'm just wondering then, how do you really propose to do that? Could it be something as simple as a center that helps students find their own darn textbooks online at low cost, and they buy them themselves and get them shipped to themselves?
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, that's a good question, and one of the things that really opened my eyes in one of our conversations with Sodexo was simply their perspective that there are always going to be more affordable options. What they're not necessarily selling, or what these stores of the future should necessarily be selling, is the cheapest. Yes, we can give them advice. Many of our faculty do. Many of the people in student services already help them find where they can get the most affordable textbook. what Sodexo brings, or what a good bookstore would bring to the table, is the ancillary services that will help students not only make the best purchase, make sure it fits with the course and the text that the faculty has requested, help them servicing returns and buybacks and all of those things. And so it's the other high-touch services that bookstore would provide that would hopefully differentiate the cost. But we'll always want to try to find the best cost as possible. But even there, our bookstores can do better. One of the things we've been struggling with Nebraska Books has been to get them to actually keep a ratio of used to new books. And they've continually brought more new books than the used books, and we just haven't gotten there. That drives the price point up. That's one of the fundamental issues, is making sure we have that. They have added textbook rental, but there's so much more we could do with the textbook rental market, as well as the third-party market. I think there's quite a few things that somebody who really is knowledgeable at the industry and can provide that service that can do to bring down the cost, although they may never be the most inexpensive book on the market.
Any other questions? Trustee Mosier?
Just a quick one. Does that require an RFP then, when in fact we look at that, even though you're just looking at Sodexo now?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosher, that was a question that we asked Jerry Harris too, to find out, what does this actually require? If we were going to look at a new relationship with a company that doesn't provide the service that we're looking at, we would probably go out for an RFP. But the fact that Sodexo has a current existing contract relationship, has a unique model of a student store, I believe he's pursuing the expansion of the existing contract to actually expand services as the justification for not doing a full RFP. If for some reason we can't come to some type of proposal that we would be open with, certainly we would have to go out and do an RFP. And I think we would do that regardless and still discontinue our relationship with Nebraska Books.
Madam Chair, tying on to that question of Ed's, does Sodexo run anything like this model currently anywhere?
Yeah, they do, Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty. They've been growing more into the market. Most of it has been in the Northeast, but one of the interesting things, and if I get the dates wrong, Carol, tell me, most of you are familiar with Gonzaga University? They've been running their bookstore for 30 years up there.
That's the Northwest.
What did I?
You said Northeast, but that's okay.
Yeah, right, but very limited in the West.
I
So the
see.
West is a
Okay.
growth area for them. I'm not quite that geographically challenged, Kevin. We are in Wyoming, right? Yeah. It is one of the few in the West. The West is a growth market for them.
All right.
I want to thank Judy Hay for taking us on the tour that night of that area, because I think for most of us that gives us a better idea of what's really going to happen there. So thank you, Judy. And
That
thank you,
concludes
Bill.
my report. I was going to give you an update on strategic planning, but I believe you have a couple of trustees that can give you that as well in their board reports.
Sure. Thank you very much. Moving on to board reports, capital campaign, Bill Du Bois and Don Erickson.
The committee hasn't met since the last time we've had our board meeting. I do have one suggestion, and that is a change in the title, the way we identify this as a capital campaign. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be more appropriate to be the Special Election Steering Committee.
Sure, that's fine with me. It looks like it's okay with Lisa.
And then, Lisa, maybe you have some additional info as to activities that have occurred since the last board meeting.
Madam Chair, I'm Trustee Erickson. Good evening. I will be happy to give you a quick update. We do have our campaign kickoff, and that will be for the foundation board as well as the trustees. And we've also invited some other special guests to join us for that evening at Anne Marie Hale's home. And hopefully you all have that on your calendars and are planning to join. We are sending out invitations, and we apologize for the multiple snowstorms that postponed that
Not your
several
fault.
times. So we hope that you'll all be able to join us, and we'll be kicking that off. Just to give you a quick update, Trustee Mosier and Dr. Schaefer have been out helping us to share information with the community. Trustee Mosier spoke on campus, and we had 2 different sessions. Those went very well, and Dr. Schaefer has been going out to the community groups, including the Chamber, the Rotary, the Lions, and the ever so popular Good Morning Sunrise group at 5:30 in the morning or something crazy, or 6:30 in the morning, which felt like way too early. But we are getting very positive response from the community. They have been overwhelmingly positive with endorsement cards. and with their words. And so we have been very pleased with that. Of course, Dr. Schaefer and Trustee Mosier both did a very good job of explaining the need for these buildings and the need for our entire master plan. So the first phase of our campaign is going very well. We are getting ready to wrap up those community groups here in the next week or so. And then when Stefan Pappas is finished with the architectural renderings, we'll start building the next pieces, which will include those drawings. So we're very excited about that. The video is now on our website. So if you would like to share that website with your colleagues, please do so. And we are going to send that link out to campus as soon as the summer classes start. So I know that there were a lot of people who weren't able to see that first video. So that's where we are with some of those. We are working with Align with some focus groups right now. They are asking 4 different focus groups some very pointed questions about some of the hurdles that we may occur in the campaign, and so we're gathering more information there. And the steering committee will be meeting again next week.
Thank you, Lisa. Great information. Don, did you have anything else?
No, I don't.
No? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz.
Strategic Planning, Bill Du Bois and Ed Mosier.
Well, we had our one fine meeting, and we're going to have the next one on June 10th. Is that correct? Correct. Dr. Schaefer, and then I don't know, you haven't decided, I guess, from the email whether it's the 11th or the 13th.
Correct, we have not determined the second date yet.
So,
Okay.
anyway, that's what's happening, and we're coming along, and that one, those meetings are gonna involve a lot of outsiders coming in and talking to us. And a lot of business leaders, political leaders, that sort of thing.
I would simply add to that, I thought the meeting was structured very well. And I look forward to the fact that I think this will allow us to really understand how our vision ties into the needs of the community as we listen to those presenters, both outside and inside. The only thing I would suggest is I'll probably resign from that committee because Joe sent out a reading list and I'm not.
You're one of those students, huh?
And so I'm immediately, retention figures are going to be bad. No. I do think the material that we'll get a chance to look at as we move forward will really be helpful to the group, and look forward to working on that.
No dropping out?
No.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I have a clarification for myself that
Of course.
the next meeting is going to be on the 10th, and you're also talking about the 11th and 13th? I just got some confusion on that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, so just for a bit of perspective, what I laid out for the team last week was essentially a path and a structure to the strategic planning. One of the first things we're going to do is a comprehensive environmental scanning process. Part of that is research and reading and seeing what's out there, but part of that is actually having key community partners come in and tell us a little bit about where their organization is headed and give us some advice. I've asked them to say, if you could be in charge of LCCC, what would you ask us to do or have us do to help your organization? So on the 10th, we'll have presentations by the Wyoming Community College Commission, Dr. Rose and Chair Atwell, presentations by the Chamber of Commerce, Cheyenne Leeds, presentations by the mayor and by County Commissioner Troy Thompson, presentation by the University of Wyoming, as well as our K-12 partners. And so they're going to sort of lay that out for us in the morning. We'll come back on a second day then, and a second morning, and we're going to bring folks in right now working on the Department of Workforce Services for labor projections, have reached out to Dick O'Gara for economic data, as well as looking at our key performance indicator data and all those good things, and then have a conversation based on all that to sort of start to draw some assumptions about the future and what's happening in the community. That's really the first piece, and then we're going to go into a comprehensive review of the mission, vision, value statements, and developing a vision for the future. We'll go through a SWOT analysis based on those two in subsequent meetings. Then we'll actually get into drafting the plan and doing all that over the summer. So it'll be multi-steps to the process.
The 10th meeting is going to be held here, and what time?
It'll start at 8:30 that morning on the 10th and will conclude probably about 1:30.
And will the board get an invitation to attend?
If the board would like an invitation, I would be happy to send that. At this point, the only members were your representatives, Trustee Du Bois and Trustee Mosier.
Okay, and so that's probably on the schedule, or not?
No, those dates have just been
Okay.
set the
Yeah.
last 2 days.
Maybe you could just let us know in case people wanted to drop in and listen. Would that be okay?
Madam Chair, I think that would be fine.
Okay.
Unlike the last meeting where I said I didn't wish to attend, I wish to attend this one.
Duly noted.
Just mark that in.
Madam Chair, I believe Don must want to come for the binning that we will be doing.
Yes. My vernacular.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Next is Finance and Facilities. Kevin and Ed. And
Madam Chair, we didn't have a meeting. It got canceled. There were so many cancellations in the last couple of months, I can't remember why we canceled this one.
with snow, probably.
Well, you would think so, but it might have been a lack of interest. I don't know.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Moving on to the General Education Program Requirements. Trustee Kilty.
Madam Chair and President Joe, there have been a number of rumors floating around the campus, and I just thought it would be good to cast a light on those rumors here in the board meeting so that everybody can hear what your response to it is, and I think we can put these rumors to bed. The first one that's been floating around the campus is that following the University of Wyoming, we're going to eliminate English 1020 and PE from our Gen Ed requirements. And rather than ask any more, I'll just let you give me the response I've heard before.
Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty.
Hope it's the one I heard before.
Yeah, we'll see. You'll have to critique. I wrote that down somewhere. I just can't find it. No, let me, if I may, Madam Chair, provide a little bit of context to the conversation. For those of you that were there and recall, when we kicked off this academic year as part of the faculty convocation and my State of the College address, one of the things that I had asked the faculty and sort of laid out was that we take a purposeful examination of our general education program, if you will, here at LCCC, and truly look at the coursework, the content, and more specifically the outcomes. What's the purpose of a general education at LCCC? What does that mean, and how does that translate into coursework and ultimately translate into significant components of our degree programs and certificate programs? And that was work that we had set out. It was tied to the work on institutional competencies or learning outcomes. But my hope was that we could actually examine and identify what we mean by general education. And there's a variety of reasons for doing that. One is truly to provide some clarity and consistency, specifically within our Associate of Arts and Associate of Science programs. Two was to start to get to the determination of whether or not we should be including general education within some of our applied areas where we're not. And what does that mean? And then three was just to help guide the process for students who come here for my generals. We hear that all the time. I'm here for general education. I'm here for general education. And so my question at a very simple level is, what does that mean? What does that mean to students, and what does that mean to the faculty? Now, I was honest, and I continue to be honest, that if we do this without taking into consideration what the University of Wyoming is doing, we are shortchanging our students. Those students that come to us and say, I'm here to get my general education, are going to the university. If that general education isn't at least somewhat complementary, if not connected to the University of Wyoming, we're setting them up for additional coursework or perhaps misalignment. So when we went into it, we brought in, as Dr. Stahlnecker has been involved with the university's work on updating their university studies program or general education core. We brought that context into the conversation, and thus far the draft that they have does propose dropping the physical education requirement within that. And so the university has suggested dropping the physical education requirement. They're looking at a 30-credit structure to their general education. And they've sort of structured it more broadly so that colleges and schools over there and programs can fit within that. And so they have foundations in communication and quantitative literacy, a freshman seminar, secondary communication, third communication levels, all of those things that that are sort of now left to a little bit more flexibility, but trying to get their general education structured. That has been included in those comments, very similar to that, have been included in numerous conversations that I've had with faculty, with Dr. Fierro and other members on campus, and have sort of tried to help facilitate and stimulate the conversation about general education. I have also, as you know, drafted a policy on general education as well as a policy on degrees and certificates that I've been trying to advance and move along and get those things going. Ultimately, and to your question in my long-winded way, Dr. Kilty, it is up to the faculty to determine the general education requirements. Whether or not we keep a physical education requirement, that's up to the faculty. Whether or not we include English 1020 as the secondary step in a sequence of a communications element to general education is ultimately up to the faculty to determine that. And so nowhere have I said or stated that we are not doing that. And I think that we've all been clear that what I want to see is a very coherent general education program. I want it to make sense for our students and for our programs. I do want it to align or at least be compatible with the University of Wyoming's. I do want to find a way that we can actually celebrate and document the completion of it, whether it's on the transcript or a credential. It's something that we simply need to do. What is actually the general education is comprised of is conversation for the faculty. What do we believe is important in liberal education and in general education? What do we believe our students need to have, regardless if they're going to be a nurse or go on to be a chemist or a music teacher? What general education do we want and why? That's the work that I've asked the faculty to do. So as to a specific curriculum, I don't think anything's been determined. And my guess is when we're all done with this, there's going to be a whole lot of similarity with what we have right now. It'll be better documented and more clear for our students. We have formed Academic Standards has formed a subcommittee, a general education subcommittee that's tied to that. It's comprised completely of faculty that will be tasked with working on this. And I've told them I'm going to bring those policies forward, and they need to help inform what specific details about general ed fits within these policies to guide our work in the coming year. So we're not doing away with it that I know of, but we might. That's up to the faculty. I think there's flexibility in what we can do with general education to incorporate and continue the sequence of communications, to incorporate the 1 credit physical education requirement. I think that's really up to the faculty to determine.
Thank you.
Okay. More questions?
More questions?
Just
Before you move along,
yes.
may I tag
Sure.
along on this?
Yeah.
If I'm hearing you correctly, there appears to be some motivation to remove physical education as part of a required, you say in general education or in the 2-year degree. I'm not sure, but that the requirement for physical education would be dropped. If that's the case, I'd speak a little bit maybe against that. I'm not prepared here at this point to give a real good response to it, but to me, the overall growth of an individual includes their physical fitness, and physical education is a means to do that. Now, if you're looking at priorities and it's looking at, okay, there's so much money for this and there's so much money for that, and then maybe physical education is one of the least in the hierarchy of all the activities, I guess I can understand it. So then I would go forward with an argument to raise the physical fitness higher into the priority in the hierarchy. So for one trustee here, I'd like to express that particular caveat to the discussion that may then also go on to your faculty.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, I appreciate that, and I think those would echo with the sentiments of some of our faculty that believe strongly the same way. I know Dr. Kilty has, and some of our faculty have presented to me research about the obesity issue and physical fitness issue. Interestingly, though, you will find faculty on this campus that would argue against that for a variety of reasons. One, your physical fitness and physical behavior is really a value that's instilled in you at a young age by your family members. So is this something that a 1-credit physical education class is truly going to change? Two is the concept is physical education and that a public health conversation? Should it be built within the education, and is the institution's responsibility to do it? There's valid arguments on both sides, and ultimately, one way or the other, I think there's arguments that we could all get behind and support, whether we include it or we don't. But I think the faculty need to look at that in context of an entire general education program and determine where's the priority and at what level, and do we want to get behind this and believe this? And I'll support them with whatever they come up with.
And also what we might come up with. Obviously, we have the opportunity to provide our input once the recommendation comes to us. And we either approve it, we reject it, or we modify it.
Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, that actually raises an interesting question. To my knowledge, I don't know that the board has ever reviewed or approved a general education program at the college. And I'm not going to say I'm opposed to it. I think you would approve and consider all the other programs, and so there's certainly an opportunity for input and review of that. And again, that's a board policy conversation that I can help guide with it, but I don't think that's been the past practice.
Yeah, I'd just like to tag along and say I agree with Don Erickson that I think PE for 1 hour, the 1 hour you would save by eliminating PE, is not worth the possibility that people would find an activity in PE that they would continue on with the rest of their life that they would not have found otherwise if they hadn't taken a PE class in college. But bringing up this business about approving the course of study for Gen Ed, Ed Mosher brought up an interesting point. The board confers the degrees on the students, and I don't want to step on any faculty's toes, but I think the board has some input in what we think probably is a proper general education, a group of general education requirements. It's still up to the faculty to bring a proposal forward, but I think we should have something to say about it.
Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty, and you will at the policy level, you can at a higher level as well. The policy, as I've drafted and shared with the faculty, outlines broad parameters of areas in which we would want students to have in general education. Does not specify that you can take Psychology 1000, English 1010 at that level. That would have to be a determination up to you. I would highly advise against putting that into policy just because of the changes that happen naturally in curriculum. But you will have a role in policy, and policy will state in general, this is what we want to see with that. And I'm asking the faculty to actually advise that policy so I can bring you a recommendation.
Trustee Mosier?
It strikes me that we need to talk a little bit about this issue of the X number of hours, and I don't think we're looking at 30 as being magical, if I heard you correctly, but we're talking about general ed core in many years, and for those faculty who might be a part of this in this discussion, who come from and have been around here for a while, know that the University of Wyoming has gone through a number of iterations of their university studies program. They had different names for it. I had mentioned to Dr. Schaefer that I'm pretty certain there were 5 changes in the time that I was on the faculty here from the University of Wyoming. And one thing that we encounter, and I hope we'll express some caution in this, is that the university often starts off on these and then goes back to what they had before. So we found ourselves more than once in those 5 changes, changing some things and then stepping back and going back to what we were before. That's not to say this isn't a good approach. I think it's good because it makes you really discuss and substantiate as best you can the value of what courses should in fact help a student and benefit them in terms of that basic core that we're talking about, whatever name you give it, general studies or whatever. But I'm a little concerned about this issue of having a group of credits that we're going to call Gen Ed in giving, are we talking about a certificate? What are we talking about to recognize that? Because it seems to me like we've we're stepping into something different than a certificate, different than an associate's arts or science or whatever. Is that, do I have the correct perception?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, yeah, my recommendation will be in the direction is to do something to actually formally recognize the completion of general education. To not do that is simply turning a blind eye to the reality of what's happening in a community college right now. Our students come to us and find considerable value in a sequence of anywhere between 28 and 40 credits of general education that they then apply to a university. And when they leave us with just that, they aren't recognized as a success. They end up having to take it course by course transfer to the university. It's not a block transfer, and yet it clearly is a valuable collection of courses that they can use. And at the foundational definition of any type of degree or credential, that's what we're talking about, a curriculum that's a collection of coursework that builds or develops something within a person that they can use. And so my argument and my push and recommendation is that we do something, at a minimum, transcript, general education completed on our transcript. And what I would like to see is some level of credential that would actually recognize their completion of general education. That doesn't lock us into any specific curriculum. I mean, curriculum changes, our programs change, our degrees change, but it actually recognizes a valuable completion or step towards an educational goal that our students are doing right now. And I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but when I'll be able to show you and can show you the number of students that complete 32 to 36 credits from us and transfer to the university or transfer somewhere else. They're completing general education and they're leaving and they're showing up as an unsuccessful exit. And so we're trying to do that. The other thing, just quickly, that my hope with this, because I do understand universities change, though. In fact, we were over on Monday at the university speaking with the provost and representatives over there. I want to actually formally articulate it and get it in writing and say, if we do this, you'll accept it as this and do a one-to-one. And then if it changes, it forces them to have that conversation with us so that we can update the articulation agreement. So it doesn't get reverted back to course-by-course transfer. Right now, the agreement we have in place is if a student completes an associate degree and goes to the university, they'll credit their general education program. Well, if you take a 64-credit associate degree and you get awarded 30 to 40 credits, what about those other credits? Then the best we have is to hope that we had a good faculty advisor that made sure all those other credits truly align with the program. But what we want to do is actually, when those students leave us after a year, they can actually take that block and step in and move right into sophomore status at the university. So that's my hope. Now, there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen with it, but you can tell I feel fairly compelled that that's a direction we should consider.
Madam Chair, can I just follow on? You know, I don't have a problem with the idea of providing some documentation there. I just want to make sure that as we do that the students do in fact have the value, because we know the statistics show us that if they complete a degree here and transfer to UW, they will do as well or better than students who start at UW. And so I'm a little concerned when we send them halfway through that process, which in effect, yeah, they've got the general ed, but they don't have the related program work. For example, a business admin student would, and there's articulation with UW, for example, in the College of Business, they might carry 2.5 years to UW and be able to move on. So they're getting more than the general education that's already there. But without getting into that, I understand what you're looking at there. I would just like to know how we can make sure that benefits the student in the broad scheme, and not just think of completers and they're not really, I guess in the broadest sense, that's the true liberal arts completer. Because that's not a program completer, they're just a general ed completer.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, it's interesting, and the further you go in this, we could end up in some pretty interesting conversations, because yes, in many ways they are completing, and if we believe general education in of itself is an identifiable body of something, they're completing something, so they may be, but to your point, we want to, and we will encourage them to complete programs, and we'll be working on programmatic articulations. there are just some cases and times, and we can do it by numbers, whether we want them to complete an associate degree or not. Significant numbers of students at LCCC are not. They're completing general education. They're simply doing that. And in some cases, because we don't have strong relationships with divisions at the university, I know at least 2 of them, we will probably never be able to articulate our first 2 years and move them over to junior standing over there. The best advice we can give our students is complete a year with us and get over to the university as fast as you can after that. We want to have them take what they complete with us and move it over and have value in that block so they can step right in and do that versus taking 36 credits of general education and then going course by course by course by course to see where it fits when they get over there. So without that value, I would never want to put a certificate or a credential or anything on it, but that value will have to be defined between a relationship between the university and LCCC, which, by the way, institutions in the state have been trying to do with the UW for a long time, including Casper College, and I honestly think we have the opportunity to be one of the first that can articulate at the general education level with them.
Thank you. Trustee Kilty?
Well, that sort of ties in with the next question I had, which was that a number of people were, there's a rumor that there will be no class that runs on this campus that doesn't have at least 10 or 12, or I don't know what the number is officially in it. And as you know, we have programs here, and you know, this ties into the earlier topic, because in many cases we don't transfer degrees, we transfer programs. And so, for example, in engineering, if they get an AS degree here in engineering, it goes over to the University of Wyoming, and not only have they satisfied all of their gen ed requirements, but they will accept all of their other credits. And, you know, providing they didn't go off and take something really odd. It was the program of study that we've identified, and that's true of business, and it's true of some other things on this campus. And one of the ways we've gotten around this in the past is we would transfer back credits. They leave here with maybe 40 hours and go to the University of Wyoming and finish what is required of an AS degree here. Those transfer back here. Engineering has no problem then giving them the added benefit of saying your gen ed requirements are finished at this point. So if we get to the point where we aren't teaching some of these advanced courses and we can't finish programs here, there is that option, but still we have some place-bound people in this town, and if we don't run these additional courses, we're putting them on the road and sending them over to Laramie back and forth all the time. So can you give us some guidance on what this limit of 10 or 12 students is going to be like? Because we ran lots of courses with fewer students than that over the years.
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, yes, in fact, I'm happy to, because this seems to be something that I'm explaining over and over and over and over again. There is a policy that will be going to College Council, I think June 14th. I think that's one of them in this one, the enrollment management one. It's been drafted that will define this in policy and procedure, so you'll see it here probably at your next business meeting. That will actually outline the parameters, and as I've been saying over and over and over again, there will always be cases where we run courses that have enrollments below the threshold of break even, if you will. The work that's before us from truly an efficiency standpoint is managing our curriculum so that becomes less and less of an instance, and right now it's very prevalent. Last year we had well over 30% of our courses ran below the break-even point for them to actually break even, and in some cases we had capacity to take students out of a low-enrolled course into another section. We have not managed our curriculum. So what we are looking at doing within this policy and within strategic enrollment management is to actually look at how we offer courses that we can maximize in filling the capacity within those courses, so to ensure that we not only have courses offered so students can complete, but they also aren't breaking the bank into the point where we're running into fiscal issues over and over again. And I can show you the trend at the campus that's sort of taken us in that direction. Within that policy, though, it also identifies courses that would be considered guaranteed, those that we will run when they're underneath that level. Courses that require a certain faculty-to-student ratio by accreditation requirements, safety issues, advanced classes within a clearly published curriculum sequence that students need to complete their degree. So when we get to that point where you have students that have made their way through and you start with 20, but by that last spring in their sophomore year, there's 10 or 8, we're going to run that course so they can complete. Right now, though, the curriculum isn't clearly sequenced, isn't clearly identifiable. Students don't have academic plans on file to even be able to say, do they need that? So we have to do some work with our curriculum. But there will always be those cases where we'll continue to run those courses. We just need to take an objective viewpoint of how we run courses. What we're looking at, really, the big changes here is when we take a developmental math class and we offer 10 sections and they all run at 10. We probably should offer 7 and run them at 15, right? I mean, that's really what we're looking at, trying to change is some of those approaches to the way we schedule.
Could I ask just one quick question? When you talk about, we don't do cost accounting here, so the cost of a class is probably pretty hard to identify. Are you using marginal cost or average?
For the most part, average. I haven't got down to specific faculty salaries. We've averaged the cost of the instructional. We've averaged overhead. We've averaged revenue generated from that, and so it's an approximate amount. We actually take a subsidy from adjunct instructed classes to full-time level classes to get to one number. That's where the number 12 is for FY13 based on the revenue. So it's not specific to each and every individual program. It is averaged for the institution.
Answered your question?
Thanks.
Any other questions? Trustee Mosier? You don't know whether you want to ask it or not?
Well, no, I'm just, Madam Chair, you can direct me on this, or Dr. Schaefer. It begs the question, too, as we move forward with this program that's the 18-week program. I guess I'm asking a question here regarding, in the past we've offered and continue to offer sequential classes, 8 weeks, accounting 1, accounting 2, economics, and other areas where we'll do 8 weeks and follow up with 8 weeks. The base has been common with that. We've offered out in the county opportunities for, and I say in Pine Bluffs, this has been a while since they've asked for that or wanted one, but we've done those in short time frames without taking a long time on this. I'm a little concerned as we move forward with this, what we're doing to assess the quality of what we're doing. It's one thing to put the student at the other end. I'm just asking, is there some way that we can go back and check the performance of those students coming out of that program versus those coming out of the regular programs? And I realize that would take some time to do, but I would hope we considered doing that, because there is an issue. I mean, goodness, and some of you folks have been through those courses. I've taught courses, 3 credit hour courses in 3 weeks, and students' completion rate, success rate was phenomenal compared to other times. But the one thing that always concerned me was, what about their retention of that material? You know, you push it to them real fast, they've got it today, but how about tomorrow and the next day? So if we could just look at their progress later on in their programs, if we could try to look at some of those statistics, and I realize that's easier asked for than done, but it concerns me a little bit that sometimes as we rush to judgment, that we may be losing something in what we're really doing for those students.
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, actually, I'm pleased that you asked the question for a variety of reasons. First, in regards to the accelerated program, and again, one of those rumors that's going around about this, essentially what we've done, and this is the fundamental issue that we need to focus on as community colleges in regards to program coherence, is we've packaged what we're already doing in a way that actually leads people to a credential. Our general studies degree is one of the largest degree producers we have on campus. This takes the 8-week courses, for the most part, that we're already teaching, and packaging them into a coherent program path that will take a student to their associate degree in 18 months. So it's doing what we're already doing, and packaging it in a way that actually is clear to students to help them succeed. That's the fundamental work we have to do as we refine and redevelop our programs in the coming year to get them through. But the bigger point, and the thing that I'm glad you brought up, is regard to quality. And that's one of the concerns that I hear constantly, and I think we throw that around in higher education. We talk about quality, and when we get into the definition of quality, not only is it really hard to define, but we divert back to the things that are really more of the inputs into a process that would result in a quality output. It's not quality because Trustee Erickson doesn't have a degree from Yale. He has one from here. It's not quality because he's using this textbook when I want to use this textbook. And as Trustee Kilty has pointed out, those are important inputs, you know, that you can certainly look at, but quality comes from the output. What we need to do, and we'll be doing in this next year, is establishing accessible learning outcomes for all of our courses that will be common across all sections, all faculty of the same course. So if you're teaching English composition, and whether Don's teaching it or Ed's teaching it or Christine's teaching it, the outcomes for that course are the same. And then the step further, and this one will be harder to swallow, I believe, for the institution, is we need to have common assessments of those outcomes. So that regardless of who's teaching it, when they're teaching it, how they're teaching it, what textbook they're using, we're assessing whether or not the students can actually do what they can do. So I agree. If an 18-week compressed coursework shows that the students aren't able to actually achieve a level on those outcomes based on that assessment in comparative to the 15-week traditional section, we're going to look at what's the quality implications and what's going on there. We don't have that right now. And in fact, certain sections of the same course are being taught with different outcomes. And we're using grades as the way to try to determine whether or not a distance learning course is better than a face-to-face course. Well, you know it. Any of you who have been faculty have given a grade, an A or a C for Christine and a C for Don or Bill. Those C's aren't equal, because you can take different parts where you know and don't know that would result to that C. When you assess the intended outcomes of that course, then you know whether or not Christine can actually do what we want her to be able to do. That's what we'll be doing over the course of this year as we work through our courses and our programs and all of that, is saying if we want to assure quality, put the quality measures out there, say here's how we're going to assess it, and then I don't care how we deliver it. And if a student can get to those outcomes in 3 weeks, 8 weeks, 15 weeks, and retain it and do it, that's what we're after. If distance learning works, if we can do it at night, during the day, regardless of the textbook, that's where academic freedom really comes in for a faculty's ability to take the text that they want, adapt their teaching style to fit their strengths, but also the classes. We all know each class is different, learners are different. That's where you flex the academic freedom to try to get the students to those outcomes. And there's many roads to that outcome, but then we assess that. And so I'm with you. I'm there with you with this program, with online program. If we move science courses online, I'm there with you. But we need to have those common measures so we can truly compare the quality with the curriculum. And I think that's the hard conversation, the work that we have over the coming year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, we're moving into the budget. I will turn this over to Carol Hoagland. I think our budget books are right in front of us.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board of Trustees. The President and I are pleased to present to you the fiscal year 13-14 budget to you for the first reading. I think there was some confusion.
Just a second. Madam Chair?
Yes.
Procedurally, I just want to know how we will go through this. Can we ask questions as we go along, or will we finish the presentation and then pursue questions?
I would say let's ask questions as we go along, because otherwise we'll lose our train of thought. But what do you think, Dr.
Madam
Schaefer?
Chair, Trustee Mosier, I think Carol's presentation will be relatively brief. She's going to outline the areas, but if something comes up, I'm sure she would be fine with a question. But I believe she's going to be relatively brief, and we'll get to the point and have lots of discussion then.
Yes, thank you. I think there was some confusion. This is the first reading, and the budget was developed to meet your expectations and priorities and ultimately aligns with your strategic plan. The total budget request remains the same, with the exception of the minor notable items that Jane had given to you in the budget revision document. Probably the most notable thing is the decrease in state aid for the course completion that was recently calculated by the Commission, and that resulted in a reduction of $45,348. You'll also note that the presentation has changed to conform with the Wyoming Community College Commission's standard budget format. We've included in the appendices additional information that we believe is important to the understanding of the budget, but that information won't be submitted directly to the commission. The budget does incorporate the legislated reduction of 6%, which equates to about $1.2 million. This year's budget focuses on a revised process that ensures the budget was developed with a broad-based inclusion of faculty and staff across campus to promote transparency and still maintain an essential focus on ensuring the college's fiscal health in the future. The inclusion of the College Council through the Budget, Resource, and Allocation Committee was key to the process. Identifying efficiencies and reallocating existing funds to meet the board priorities resulted in making purposeful investment in instruction and faculty, making progress on the Building Forward facilities plan by completing Level 1 studies, and beginning the Level 2 planning for both the University Student Center and the Flex Tech buildings. And then also we're making an investment in student services. We're continuing to move base budget commitments from the 1 mil to the general fund. We are investing in the LCCC people by proposing a 2.5% increase along with the state retention incentive that was funded in this last legislative session. This budget provides flexibility and stability within the college resources to help the institution navigate unanticipated opportunities and challenges in the near future. The proposed budget maintains a strong fiscal health by preserving core operations and preparing for the future. On page 5 of your document is the total budget.
Would anyone else like a budget? I think we have some more books if anyone
There's, I think-
would like one. They're over by Vicki. Could they have one, Vicki? The audience? Did you want one too? Thank you very much. Then they can follow along better. How about anyone else? Thank you.
Okay. On page 5, you will see the fund budget summary. So this is the total budget, includes all the funds for the institution. It amounts to $63,394,793, or a 5.4% decrease over the 12-13 budget. The process going forward is that we will have a second reading in the month of June, and then we'll again let you know if we've made any updated changes to the budget. And then the final approval happens in July at your business meeting. So between this reading and the second reading, we will be taking comments and board direction. And I think that the board has a good mechanism for us to collect those, and that would be through the Finance and Facility Committee, if the board so chooses to do that. But that's a good spot to do that. And our next meeting is the 11th of June. With that, I'll open it up to questions, and thank you for the opportunity to present this to you.
Thank you, Carol. Questions? Trustee Mosier.
On page 3, under investing in LCCC's people, probably about line 6, when we get down to where it says FY14 budget includes a 2.5% pay increase, just for consistency and appropriateness for what I think we're trying to do here, I believe that I'd like to see that read at 2.5% COLA for nearly all benefited employees, because if you look in the following sentence, this investment equates to an estimated $527,000 in a cost of living adjustment pay plan, which is what we intend is for a cost of living. This is not a pay increase, but a cost of living adjustment.
Okay?
And so that would be consistent.
Make that change.
Thank you. Thanks, Ed. Anyone else?
Trustee Kilty?
I don't have specific questions here, but I did have some comments. Once I went in and looked at budget detail, I went through the budget detail in much the way I had the year before, and we're talking about the trend data now, Carol, is what I was talking about. And once again, I don't want to get involved in specific issues in the trend data, but there were some programs that I thought had just excessively large supplies budgets last year, and I see that they have been cut back some. But it looks like all supplies budgets have been cut back some as well. And some of these supply budgets for programs that use some expendable supplies are actually getting to be kind of small. I look at them, and having taught in some of these programs, I think to myself whether I could maintain equipment, which is pretty expensive with those sorts of budgets. Now, I said earlier that I thought you guys had done a really great job this year. And I think you really have. It's a huge improvement in the budget process over prior years. But you handled some of these, budget cuts from the state by saying everybody cuts 5% of their adjunct budget and so forth and so on. And it looked like sort of across-the-board cuts. I think if we face this again, it's sort of incumbent upon us to finally get into some of these programs that have excessively large amounts of money in places that are unexplained, and if they can't explain it, the cuts should really start there and not go across the board any longer. And one of the things that Ed and I noticed looking through the budget is travel expenses for the EMT program that were very large but unexplained. We don't know why they're doing so much travel. We have these other programs in which there's a very large amount of educational supplies. The amount is 6 times what physics uses, and there's some expendable supplies in physics. It's 4 times chemistry and 3 times biology. Those are programs in which there's a lot of expendable supplies, and yet this other program that I don't even understand why they're after very many supplies at all, because they used the program was originally conceived to use fixed trainers. It has this very large budget. So, in the future, I don't think we can handle budget cuts the way we have in the past. And, I'll just ask for your response on that, I guess.
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, I'd be happy to do that on a couple of levels. First, when we went to this approach and we identified percentages for reductions, we were real clear that this wasn't going to be across the board. They were percentages that we would look at the vice president level. How those played out within each area was up to them. And in fact, some of the targets, what we set for operating budgets versus reduction of part-time staff, students, adjunct faculty, didn't quite turn out the way we had sort of guided or wanted it to in the first place, but we supported that because that was what was brought forward. So for example, we asked the instructional areas, hold your operational budgets flat. Don't ask for more, but don't cut. Because your work is really looking at how you're using student employees and adjunct faculty. Let's manage our curriculum, let's manage our schedule, and let's maximize the coursework that our full-time faculty are teaching. And lots of logic and reasoning I'm happy to go into if you want on why we are really targeting that. But if nothing else, that presentation at your last meeting that shows the rise in part-time employees here over the last 3 or 4 years is a pretty good indication. That was the point, though. Now, in some cases, programs said we're going to cut our operational supplies and preserve our adjunct lines, and part of that maybe was let's wait and see how this adjunct thing pans out. Hopefully, we'll have additional revenues because we'll manage our schedule even better than I think that this budget projects. But it was not intended to say everybody cut this 5%, everybody cut this. These were targets, that reductions at the vice president level, and in some cases, some people actually had increases, but in other ones had much deeper cuts with that. But to your other point, I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, one of the things I think that our budget committee struggled with, that we continue to struggle with, is what criteria do you use to determine what's the appropriate level of funding? And which ones, and we've kicked everything around looking at these programs from what are they buying? Well, what's the level of fee that they charge? Some of those programs you're talking about have much higher fees than our physics courses. Is that good or bad? I don't know. Is it the number of students we serve? Well, what if they're a support curriculum? To combat that, that's why we're engaging the help of the College Brain Trust in this last piece, and that's why we're looking at some objective measures that will let us hone in on how effective these programs are at meeting what we believe the purpose of the institution is. So I think especially as we go into the next year, we'll be able to say, look, we're spending a lot of money per student or per graduate or for the value of the outcome of that program, and we'll be able to take a much harder look into that. Right now, what we have is historical data and what people have spent, and I do think, though, that, and you don't see it in here, even though it hasn't been perfect, our Budget and Resource Allocation Committee, they asked some tough questions. So I think one of the questions they asked was, why is the paramedic one? And I believe that Patrick came back and said it's because of the travel we're required to take them to do their clinical activities in Denver and other places for it. And the committee was satisfied with those responses, and that's why it stayed that way. So you're not seeing some of the back and forth and justification in this document that actually happened through that process. But I agree, we need to sort of land on the criteria of what we want to evaluate the appropriateness of the funding and the appropriateness of how effective our programs are, and start to use those to drive those decisions. Because if by some chance we move into next biennium with greater cuts, this strategy isn't going to work. We're going to actually be looking at reducing and possibly eliminating programs and services to make those cuts. Agree.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Trustee Mosier.
with regards to the travel that's required there, I'm just wondering, as we look at that, are there trade-offs in terms of the revenue that's generated by that program as we come back and think about what we were talking earlier in terms of size of classes and their break-even? Is that an element within the context of that program?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, yes, it is. There's actually a couple of things going on there. One is we haven't, and Carol's aware of this, we're working on it. We've aggregated all fees, so it's, we've sort of had to back into figuring out how much revenue for fees is actually being generated and is it covering those costs. That's one thing that we're working on, is a new way of actually disaggregating the fees so we can track revenue and expenditures for fees by their purpose. And the work we're doing with that you'll be involved in the conversation as we get further down that line. That's the one piece. The other thing that's happening within a program like Paramedic, for example, is we're commingling non-credit and credit activities in this budget. We'll actually be moving, and I think maybe we've started to move the expense into the auxiliary account
July 1st.
July 1st, so that we'll start separating the non-credit, which really should be focused on cost recovery, versus the credit, and I think it'll get a little bit more evident to us where the money's flowing. So for example, if the non-credit's generating the revenue to cover that cost, you're just not seeing the additional revenue necessarily that's doing it. We're going to try to separate that to make it a little bit more clear, not only for you, but for us to actually determine how effective the delivery of these programs are.
Trustee Du Bois?
I just have a logistics question. All right, Carol, you said that we're to report anything that we wonder about or have questions about to Trustee Mosier and Trustee Kildee, is that correct? And then they'll meet on the 11th of July?
June.
11th of June. So we should have any ideas that we have to you before that time, is that correct?
Yes.
That would be my recommendation.
That's what I'm asking.
Any way you want.
If that's the logistics that we do, and we get it to them.
Sounds
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
And of course, I might mention that any trustee that wants to attend that meeting may. I mean, it's.
What time will it be?
9 o'clock. And if we get a big crowd, we'll move it, but right now we hold it in the admin conference room.
Of course, the only thing is if we have our strategic planning meeting that day, you understand.
So we have a conflict?
Well, we could, according to, we were talking about earlier about this strategic planning meeting, is either going to be the 11th or the 13th. So I'm just wondering.
Our meeting is probably easier to change than that meeting is, so we would be glad to yield to the steering, or the strategic planning committee.
And that was my hope, that the 13th looks like a viable option, but if we end up on the 11th, my hope is that I could implore the two trustees to be flexible with us and maybe reschedule that to some other time during that day. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I agree, your question, Trustee Du Bois, about logistics, I think that's our preferred way, is to get your comments to Trustee Kilty and Trustee Mosier and have those conversations in detail at the Facilities and Finance Committee meeting.
Just one quick point then. If there are going to be more trustees meeting, do we have to change anything about the way we notice that meeting?
I think it's noticed already.
It's
Yes,
already noticed
we-
already?
we-
Okay.
we do notice.
Good question.
I like it.
Were you worrying about
I
that?
was.
I'll think about these things.
I like it.
Maybe she won't have to come to any more meetings. I'll just use them. Okay, are there any more questions?
Madam Chair.
Trustee Mosher?
Um, Clarification regarding the plant maintenance monies, which we talked about relative to earlier this evening a little bit. Where in the budget would we see that specifically in the impact of what they might choose to do with those funds? And my other question, somewhat related to that, is on page 64 in the annual budget summary for the plant fund. There are student fees there, and I'm wondering, are those the fees that Dr. Schaefer, you referred to earlier, that would be used for some of the remodeling for the student area?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosher and Carol, nod if I'm getting off track here. Jane maybe can help too. But yes, the plant fund looks at revenues that will be coming, so I should maybe wait till they're listening to make sure I'm not off.
Okay.
The revenues will come from sort of three different areas. One of them is actually major maintenance appropriation, and that appropriation was essentially a biennial appropriation. Although we received 80% of it in this current fiscal year, we'll receive 20% of it in the coming current fiscal year. We had actually set aside $300,000 for work on the facade outside of the entryway of student services. So that's a biennial appropriation. It'll be carried over into the FY14 budget. Am I still on the right track?
Mm-hmm.
Student fees, the money that we would move into plant to do the student lounge would be a portion of that. And some movement out of the 1 mil fund balance comes in as revenue to do things like the CTE expansion, and possibly if we have to use the 1 mil fund balance to do any of that. And so that should be what's illustrated in there in terms of the revenue. Am I close, or did I miss anything, Jane?
No, and then the additional student fees that you see are there to service the debt service in the plant fund, which is the residence halls. So what we use the plant fund for is any building remodeling kinds of activity, and all the projects that Tim runs, the plant fund is the appropriate place to account for that, and that's what we do. So even if the funding might be coming from a different fund, the general fund or the 1 mil, as Joe mentioned, then we transfer that in, and the actual expenditure activity happens in the plant fund.
Do we see anywhere, as this project moves forward, the portion that's coming out of student fees and the portion that's coming, I assume, from plant fund for the remodeling down there?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosher, you will, I believe, and again, I'll look to Carol to correct me, when we actually entertain contracts and I bring a recommendation for you to enter into contract to do the construction, because these will all be over $30,000. To do that, I will identify the source of funds for those projects in that recommendation to you, and so you will see it there. I don't know that each project is disaggregated within the budget, though. Is that?
That's true, but if you need supplemental reporting, we can include that too, as well, because now we're pretty bound to the way the commission has asked us to forward the budget. But we're using the appendices to put in all the information that we believe is important and that they're not necessarily interested in. So we can add more information in the appendices if you would like that.
Okay. Then there's an additional, the SFAC allocated funds for, that fun area we're part of or not. Is there anywhere in the budget that we look at, I know the allocation came out, it was in the wingspan, but anywhere in this budget that there's a relationship that we look and can see a tie to that?
No. The SFAC funds and the student fee funds are handled in the agency fund, and we don't budget the agency funds. The way it's accountingly structured is that we're just acting as an agent, and that we don't have oversight I would suggest that that's misleading for the student fees, but that is how Wyoming handles it.
I thought that when there was the report to the auditors last time, that we had some discussion that, maybe we have a responsibility there, and that there should be, that we would get some awareness of that monies.
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, yes, we had that, and that is still my intent. The mechanism at which we make you aware, or how to do that is, we're still trying to kind of figure out how do we do it for a budgeting perspective, reporting to the commission, and also getting you that information. I agree, and was probably one of those who brought that up, that even though it is agency, even though students essentially charge themselves those dollars so they can do what they wish with those dollars, we provide the guardianship to help them through that process. We help provide the support for the management of it from a fiscal standpoint. You have a responsibility to ensure that those funds are being used appropriately. I'm just not quite sure exactly how necessarily to bring that forward. I can tell you that the SFAC committee, the Student Government Association, did a very good job of objectively allocating those funds and taking a hard look at the use of those dollars this year. They have some wonderful documentation that they've submitted, some recommendations, in fact, of how they would like some things funded not from student fees into the future, and I'd be happy to share that information, but something to give some thought to if you have an idea of how that might best be presented to you from the SFAC perspective. I'm happy to bring that information forward, but we are working on a student fee course program, institution matrices that we hope to bring to you and have you review and possibly even approve on a biennial basis or an annual basis. So we're working on that process too. The SFAC funds are just sort of an interesting animal in the way we've accounted for them that I'm not sure how to present them to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more questions. Oh, Trustee Erickson.
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions. I do have a comment or two. I want to thank Carol and her staff that met with me on Monday. And I guess I preempted the logistics that you just established. But I had some questions and some concerns about the large operating expense reductions across the board, and particularly in institutional support area.
Are you on a certain page there?
I'm not speaking to anything specific here. I'm just overviewing why I met with her.
Okay.
After meeting with her and the staff and learning about a number of other things about the college, I found it to be very, very helpful. And I'm going to thank Carol and Jane and the other staff person that was there. It was about an hour and a half. They were not concerned about their time. I was very much concerned about their time because I might be coming back sometime. Well, I guess not. I guess we got a new procedure, so I have to go through through Kevin and Ed. I was very pleased with how that meeting went. One observation I do have is the preliminary budget that you gave us on April 3 has a column that is increase, decrease. Mm-hmm. That is for a new trustee particularly, but I think for all of us, it's good to have that particular column so we can see where there are, real quickly, we can see where there are either increases or decreases. Now, she mentioned, Carol mentioned that the Wyoming Community College Commission has a format that doesn't include that increase or decrease. It just gives the actual, the adopted for the previous year, and then what we have at this point, and then eventually the approved column. I'd like to request that there's a consideration in the future that we continue to have in our first document, which is kind of our study document, that column of the increase and decrease. It is a very quick way to identify areas where there has been reductions or increases. Other than that, I also had a chance to meet with my mentor, who volunteered to be my mentor, Ed Mosier, and Trustee Mosier, and he and I reviewed the trustee budget. I feel much more comfortable about understanding our individual department budget. And so, given that, I want to thank you, Trustee Mosier, for the time that you gave me. And I said to Carol that, and I believe that Chris will probably go along with me on this, that we're in Trustee 101. And hopefully we'll be promoted down the line to Trustee 201. I don't know who we look to give us the promotion, though.
We'll give you a diploma.
Whatever, baby. But thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, just for my clarification, I believe in your appendices, we still carry the former documents from the first round. So if you go to the book you would have received now, at the back, it's like starting on page 39, 38, it should still show you that column of increase and decrease from FY13 to FY14,
Yeah.
and we'll continue that practice.
Right. Nice. I understand that's in there. I just wanted to reinforce it.
I appreciate it.
Trustee Kelty?
You know, if you're interested in that, there is also trend data, which is much more detailed, and which Ed and I find very interesting to go through. That you have that trend data document.
I received that from Carol as well.
And I might mention to everyone that's here that document ends up in the library, and if anyone wants to look at the budget in some detail, it doesn't have permanent staff salaries and things like that in it. But if you want to look at the budget in some detail and look at a 3-year trend for various programs and departments and so forth, that's just a rich source of information, and it's available to anybody who's. Now, is this year's in the library already or not?
Not yet, but it will be.
Okay.
But it'll also be out online as well.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, it is on Eagle's Eye. It'll be published out on the College Council website. The correct versions are all there, but we have it out on Eagle's Eye, so if people want to look at it, it's underneath the budget file out there listed with it, and so we put it out there in a variety of different formats.
Madam Chair,
Trustee Mosier?
Dr. Schaefer, you can stop me at any point here, but we had a little discussion here a while back, and we're talking budgets, and this is going to be in the future, I believe, but we have in the trustee budget some money for innovation, and it doesn't have to just be that, but we had talked about, and if you look at our objectives, we really wanted to have some of that $1 million money be for, new things, innovative things. We wanted to try to do that kind of thing in the future. And I would hope that we can come up, ask the administration, you folks, to put together some kind of plan for us where programs such as something in the remedial area, whether, of course, math always comes up, but whether it be writing lab or something like that, that there's some innovative kinds of things out there. If those could be some mechanism to bring forward the policy of the board, that we provide some funds to give those a try and see what happens. So I don't know if this is a bad place in the agenda or okay to talk about, but I would really like to see us move ahead with that and see if we can't get something going, since the college is trying very hard to move ahead on some of this CCA stuff.
Yep. Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, this is a perfect time. There was actually 2 questions that I wanted to pose to you in regards to the budget. One was that we had a conversation with Trustee Kilty and the chair before the meeting, just sort of talking through some of these things, and I wanted to reiterate that there is in this budget not only the innovation funds that you have, I think it's roughly $2,500, but we put $200,000 of funds into the 1 mil that can be used for one-time initiatives, strategic ideas, good proposals to help us do better by our students. And I'll be honest, I have not put together a formal process for requesting those, but after our conversation about, how could we facilitate a request for proposals for your innovation funds, we will do that, put something together and ask people to actually submit a plan within certain parameters, how much it's going to cost, so that we can actually allocate those funds to move in towards your objectives. For your innovation funds, I'll defer to you if those are proposals that you would actually like to entertain as a board before you allocate those funds, or if you would like us just to allocate that as part of the $200,000 towards those projects that you believe will advance some of those areas.
Madam Chair,
Trustee Kilty.
I just want to say that I appreciate you moving that 200,000 over, and it turns out that was a source of some rumors on the campus where people thought that money disappeared, and I guess it had escaped my attention where it had gone. I hadn't noticed it either, and but it's innovative. It's money for innovation, and I think last fall I had said that I really hope that the new process that we had in place for the budget would lead to some entrepreneurial activity on the parts of faculty and so forth, that they'd come with some innovative programs up through the budget process, and it just didn't. It worked the way it always did. They asked for equipment, and that isn't what I was really hoping for, but
Yeah,
maybe we'll learn a new way of doing things.
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, that most likely was my fault. I mean, we communicated ongoing initiatives, strategic initiatives, and equipment. The forms we used were the same forms in the past. People just sort of adapted and they requested equipment. So most of that falls on my shoulders for not adapting it and making it more clear. But what we've done is I think we've met two goals that you set forth. One, we've created liquidity in the 1 mil. In fact, the vast majority of the 1 mil now is liquid and not committed to base commitments. And two, we have funds set aside where we can facilitate those entrepreneurial activities. So we'll get better with the process, but the resources are there, and we're always open to ideas. In fact, it's one of the things we hope to reinstill into the campus is a sense of innovation and entrepreneurship, and let's try things that help us move on the line for the completion agenda or student success, whatever.
Madam Chair.
Trustee Mosier?
In the context of what you're suggesting there, I think I'm hearing you say if there's something out there that you're aware of, I would heartily support moving forward and us then approving a request that might come forward.
Yes.
That was what our discussion was about with Dr. Schaefer before this meeting, is that we were asking him to go forward with that.
Excellent.
I just want to say, Trustee Erickson, I never come to one meeting, I've been here 5 years, and I never come to one meeting that I don't learn more and more and more. So you'll be in trusteeship 101 forever. And I'm the oldest person on the trustees other than Brenda, who isn't here tonight, so I'm not only the oldest person in the room, but the oldest trustee in terms of service, and I'm still learning
Madam
a
Chairman.
lot.
Madam Chairman, may I make sure that he's not my advisor? I wish to complete.
Madam Chair,
Dr. Schaefer.
I did have one other question that I wanted to pose to you. So if you recall, and within the budget, not only are we proposing the 2.5% pay increase, cost of living adjustment, but also there's the money in there for the one-time only retention incentive that has been funded by the legislature. Thus far, our proposal will be that we allocate that in equitable amounts per head, so that it's not differentiated by the amount of money any individual is working. It will actually benefit those that will be at the lower end of the scale, whereas those at the upper end, everybody gets the same amount. That's one recommendation. But the question that I have for you, and I'm not going to ask for you to make that decision here, but I think by our June meeting and certainly by July, I would like that. If you recall, the legislature passed legislation to increase the retirement contributions by 1%, 0.5% in FY14 and then 0.5% in FY15. For FY14, 0.25% was to be funded by the state or the employer, and that's built within our budget. And then 0.25% was to be funded by the employee. For FY14, that other 0.25% to be funded by the employee would equate to about $40,000. Is that correct, Carol? You have it within your authority to cover that. And some organizations are just agreeing to cover that. You probably read something in the paper about the school district looking at that as well. Our recommendation to you will most likely be that we pick up that $40,000 and actually cover the whole 0.5% for FY14. I think that's a very doable gesture that we can do as an institution to value our employees and continue to contribute at a higher level to their retirement. We can address what we do in 15 and 15, but it is something we do not have built in the 14 budget now. We do believe we could cover that $40,000 just through vacancy savings for FY14, and then institutionalize it in 15, but we don't want to make that commitment without board feedback and consideration. So again, certainly open to comments now, but really this is something that maybe the Facility and Finance Committee should discuss and commit, and we'll build it into the budget if that's where you'd like to go.
That sounds agreeable. Thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Thank you very much. Thanks, Jane. We're moving over to approval items now. Flex Tech Building Level 1 study. Dr. Schaefer?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm here just to give you a brief overview. I know Tim McNamara is here, Carol is here, other folks who have been on the planning committee. As I mentioned when we gave this to you at your study session, this is the completed level 1 report for the Flex Tech building. Again, this is sort of our, I think Stephan Pappas calls it the reconnaissance or feasibility, and that's what it is looking at the feasibility of this project and getting sort of an idea of how much it's going to cost, square footage, what the needs are, how we would do it. Therefore, it's not a very thick document, and so it's here for your approval so that we can move on and continue moving towards level 2. So instead of going through it, I'll just pause here and see if you had any questions that either I or Tim could answer.
I do have a couple, and why don't I just ask them both together?
Yes,
and
good
you could-
idea.
And that'll speed up the process. One is the expense of the building. I thought we were looking at a total project of about 10 million. Now it looks like, and I realize there's, some contingency funds built in and so forth. Now it looks like it's closer to 14 million. Does that mean we're going to go back out and ask the voters for this larger bond issue? And is it starting to encroach on our other bond issue at that point?
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, I don't know. I think that the added increase, well, let me step back. Level 1, this is really a shot in the dark of what we would expect it to cost. So when we started with the campus master plan, the $10 million was truly a shot in the dark based off of general assumptions. This refined that a little bit, and there was considerable conversation at the planning meeting and with the design folks and with the people, what's the appropriate size, where are we at? This is where I think at level 1 we said we really need to stop at. It is more than what we thought it would be with the general estimate from the campus master plan, but it's only at level 1. Until we truly get into programming and getting into detailed design and level 2, we won't know necessarily where the price will be for this project. But there's general feeling, even with some of the flex and, like you say, the contingency funds and some of the owner costs with this project, that it's probably going to be closer to a $14 million project with that. At this point, I believe that we can still accommodate this with a very similar ask as I discussed at the last meeting to the voters for half of the money. And that would still put us somewhere between a $20 and $25 million bond ask to the community, to the voters. I think it's doable. It's within our bonding capacity. But we hope to refine this number as we get into level 2 with that.
Madam Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry. I actually had a second.
Yeah, but my comment
ahead.
is on this
Go
question. Okay?
Yeah, I yield to.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, I happen to be on the steering committee that has been reviewing the Flex Tech building. And I attended 2 meetings. At the first meeting I attended, the faculty came in with a $19 million building. And Dr. Joe says that's not going to work. And so they went back to the drawing board, and they squeezed everything they could squeeze, and they came down to the 14 million. And I think that they did about as much refining, actually, Dr. Joe, that they can do to this point, and still have the capability to have the expansion for the technology needs that we will have in the future. So I just wanted to pass that on, because I think I made that comment at the last meeting, and I don't believe you were able to be at that meeting.
It wasn't. But
Second
Madam
question.
Chair. Yeah, the second question was in regard to the space in the building. And I was going through a table, what is the table here? Well, it's a table in the appendix that shows the classification of space in the building and how much there is. And under Class 100, which is classroom facilities, we've got 5,300 feet of shared space. This is a flex building. I was curious if that classroom space is going to be available to the whole campus. If it's not required for a technology class, can we use it for another class?
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, at the very basic answer is yes, of course. In fact, when we're not going to lock rooms up that aren't going to be used and sit vacant, and I think with any of our facilities where it's feasible, those general use spaces will be programmed and used to their fullest extent. And if at times that means additional instruction or other courses are in there, by all means. And I hope we're doing that across the campus and we're not locking down classrooms unless there's really unique equipment or something that's keeping us from using it for other purposes.
Just diesel and auto technology are going in this new Flex Tech building. What are we going to do to reuse the space they're abandoning?
Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, that's a good question. There's actually a variety of proposals. One of the interesting things here at LCCC is when space becomes available, there's no shortage of ideas of how we're going to use it. I think one of the ones that was certainly most recently being considered was actually using that for the fire, EMT, paramedic programs, specifically to get the fire equipment and the trucks inside so you can do things when you don't have the inclement weather. That's one of them. There's still going to be need for space, whether it's in the metals area, manufacturing down the road, or other programs such as process technology and things like that. I don't think we'll have an issue with reusing the space as it comes available. But like I say, right now I think we've got 2 or 3 takers that have been eyeing that space, and we'll look at it as we actually build the building.
That building to be reused, since it's had diesel and auto technology in it for years and years, might be a fair expense to remodel for other purposes.
Now, Madam Chair, Trustee Kilty, for that reason alone, we would be looking at very synergistic or similar uses for what's currently in there.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions from the faculty, staff, or the public? Yes, Kevin.
I don't want to drag the meeting any longer, but thanks again for the opportunity.
Sure.
Trustee Mosier, just us Southern boys are a little slow sometimes when you ask questions, but what I should have done was answer your question with my own self as an example. Currently, Disability Services and a couple other offices in about a month will be moving under Student Services. So when it comes to the Student Services changes, Mrs. Hay and her staff have already been including us and share with Sage Trio and such on the changes that are going on. So we're aware of what's going on, and we appreciate that, so we know, what we're going into and stuff like that. But I would venture to say if we were not leaving academic affairs and where we are now, we'd probably have a lot less knowledge of the what's and the whys of what was going on with Student Services. I could say that now for Flex Tech. I mean, I get the luxury of attending the board meetings, but for those staff members who don't, their understanding of what's really going on with Flex Tech, I have very little information except from what I get here because I'm not necessarily attached to that. And so that's what happens when things are going on out there with changes and stuff like that. This is not Mrs. Hayes' fault or anything, but the staff working in health sciences, if you ask them, hey, what's the whys and whats of Student Services changes going on, you'll probably get a lot of shrugged shoulders because they're not necessarily attached to that. But then who isn't attached to Student Services throughout this entire campus? We all go through them for one thing or another for day-to-day business. So what the fix is for that, to communicate a little better and have everybody have a better understanding of the what's and the whys and hows we're doing things down there, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, the possibility of using college council as a tool to at least to disseminate information, perhaps, with the idea that feedback can come back. I mean, who's to say that someone working in health science doesn't have some great idea of how we can do better service in Student Services with something they may, but I don't know if the door's necessarily open for them to give out those or have that opportunity to press forward. So that's just an idea, but I just thought if I use myself as an example, because I'm tied in, I know what's going on down there, but in fact, we've been included with those plans. But if I wasn't, then I'd probably have very little understanding of what was going on. And I think that's what happens outside of that realm. But we are all kind of tied together and linked together at the same time, and those things can affect how we do business no matter where we work on campus, whatever's going on down the hallway. So I just wanted to add that. I didn't want to wait a month to throw that back out there. So
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
At this time, I would like a recommendation or
Madam
a
Chairman,
motion.
I'd like to make a motion, but I have a question.
Yes.
By approving this level 1 report, that automatically authorizes Dr. Schaefer to go forward with level 2.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then I make a motion to approve the Flex Tech building level 1 study.
I second.
All those in favor, oh, do you have another question?
Yes.
Okay.
With regards to the state, now the state steps in at level 2, is that correct? And starts working with us on that?
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, yes, we are sort of half in and half out of this transition to the process in which the level 2 will essentially be conducted or driven by construction management. In previous years and prior to the commission's rule changes, the institutions could do that. We've set aside the funds to do it this year. We've been in conversation with construction management and with the commission on this one. We're going to continue to do it, fund it, go through the process in the hopes that it'll actually put us ahead of the game. But once we advance, we'll actually have to advance the level 1 in this project through the commission's CapCon once they approve it and move on to it. If we're working with construction management, I believe they've said that they would see no reason why they wouldn't accept the level 2. Is that correct, Tim?
Basically, it says we can continue to work with Pappas. Pappas can continue to level 2.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've had a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. I have a proposal here from Marty Sizik, who is our person who will do Joe Schaefer's, Dr. Schaefer's evaluation. I think we're considering it a year's evaluation because I think we had one 6 months ago, and we wanted to have one done each year so that we would be on target.
I think it's actually been a year.
It's been a year.
Crazy, yes.
Has it been a year? You've been here? A year and a half. Okay, well, we're trying to get it on target. So this is what Marty Sizik said. She would customize a multi-rater survey used in 2012, add in a category that identifies the president's progress toward current evaluation cycle goals and objectives, which I think Dr. Shaver sent to me and to Marty. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, yes, and those are the goals that I submitted to you and you approved
Yes.
during my evaluation about a year ago.
Yes, thank you. And secondly, identify up to 50 survey respondents with the key input of the president to include a 360-degree range of stakeholders, i.e. Board of Trustees, peers, direct reports, faculty, other employee groups, and community members. Number 3, administer multi-rater survey. The survey is taken online from any computer when convenient for the respondents. Number 4, generate survey reports by categories and respondent groups as requested by the Board of Trustees. 6, present survey reports to board and president. 7, provide results debrief of survey reports by teleconference as requested. And the fees will be $950 for a multi-rater survey, $500 for the survey customization, and that would equal $1,450. And then some expenses, $25 per report. So that's where we are. We want to have this done by the end of June. Any questions? We'll use the same questions that we used last time so that we have a consistency. Some of you weren't here, but we'll use the same questions. Questions?
No, I think that's fine. The one thing that was a little puzzling last time, and I think it just almost stopped Marty dead in her tracks when it occurred, is that we began discussing this in a completely public meeting, and some portion of this is personnel specific to Joe and really is not for public consumption, yes?
Correct, I agree, because I was, I think we were just, Chris, help me on this, I think we were just elected and we weren't installed yet, and we attended the study meeting where this lady was on the telephone, and I felt very uncomfortable there.
So
But,
did I.
yeah, you were talking about a personnel issue, and it was a public meeting.
Yes.
Well, we had already gone through it once, and I think you had been installed. You had been installed because we did it at the study session. I think we had
No.
already
November.
installed you.
No.
It was the board self-evaluation was the one after they were installed that
That's
we
right.
reviewed.
Oh,
at
that was the
retreat.
board
We heard
self-evaluation.
the other one, but we were not.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay.
Well, no, that's no problem. I'm just concurring with trustee
Me
Kilty
too.
here, that when it comes to the review and discussion of his evaluation, I believe that needs to be in the executive session.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Then we were very much in the wrong, because I think we did it twice. And then now I know what you're saying, because you came to the meeting, you were not yet installed, and we discussed it in November. That's true.
I need it.
Yes.
Of course, the trustees are gonna do this, but did you say there's gonna be all these other stakeholders doing this too?
Well, Marty recommended the last time that we include the peers, direct reports, faculty, and other employee groups, and community members, which Joe agrees with, so
Okay.
that we have a larger, true
How are they
306.
gonna get this?
It will be sent to them. I think what Joe and I talked about earlier this evening is that we will decide who those specific people are, and we will agree as a board, along with Dr. Schaefer, and they will be included in the survey.
Okay.
Is there any way or any value in considering the general survey that was done in February, I believe, of the college?
Could I interject something here?
Sure.
That general survey, which was done originally in February 2010, had a section on it that involved the president at one time. And it was taken out in the last iteration of the survey because we were switching from Miles to Joe at the time, and we thought it would be completely inappropriate. I just say put it back in so it's exactly the same survey as earlier, and maybe we could tweak a question or two, but there was an entire section on the president, and I think that's appropriate to bring it back.
Would you please
And I guess-
explain that to Tara?
Yeah, and this is something the council should review as well, the survey.
Oh, explain the survey. This survey was part of an AQIP, an action committee. And the survey, this one will not help because it doesn't have any of the section on the president
That is true.
in it. But it was put together by an AQIP action committee, and it was administered in February 2010. And we thought that it would probably be used in subsequent years, and we could just track progress, how the college is doing in various ways by doing the same survey over and over again. So, is there other information you want to know?
Not right now.
So what are you really asking? You're suggesting that we do this again with the president's portion in here
Mhm.
instead of this survey by Marty Sizik?
No.
You're saying,
No, we were just talking, he was asking about whether some of these questions regarding other stakeholders making suggestions about how they felt about the president, if this wouldn't be the more appropriate place for them. And this other item is really a board evaluation, which is, in my mind, more appropriate because that is our evaluation of our employee. And I don't know why additional stakeholders are going to get involved in that. Do you understand?
I think Marty had suggested that we do that the last time.
She did, and we disregarded it.
Yes, we did.
Mhm.
But I think at that time, Dr. Schaefer hadn't been in our community very long, and so maybe wasn't well-known by many.
See, I guess what I'm looking at, yeah, and I'm sorry, Dr. Schaefer.
Fine. No, please.
I'm looking at, within the context, there's one thing we're looking at in terms of Dr. Schaefer's performance, but within the context of what's going on in the environment would give us a better picture of why certain things may or may not have occurred. And so I was wanting to have a look at both when we do that evaluation to better understand the total picture.
May I understand, you would like to do this survey again with the president's portion in it and also do the one by Marty Cizik?
Yes, but not the 360 within that.
Okay.
Marty says.
Dr. Schaefer?
Madam Chair, members of the board, couple of thoughts. First, I wholeheartedly endorse and support 360 feedback and would value that feedback, however that comes. The inclusion, the leading and communicating survey that was conducted in the spring of 2010 did include a section on the president. Tara's question, does kind of pique my interest, and I need to say, I don't remember the specific questions, and I think they were general leadership and communicating questions, but they were specific to a personnel, to an individual, so we'll send you those. It was not included in the spring of 2011 because you had an interim president, and it was not included in the spring of 2012 because I think the folks that were just doing it said we'd just leave it out there because I was new. I'm not opposed to having something move back into there. It is scheduled to be delivered within our new key performance indicators in the fall of the odd years, and then in the fall of the even years we will do the national instrument. I believe the Noel Levitz instrument is the one we are using on campus morale, and do those every other year, so we have a national instrument and we have a more of the local homegrown instrument. That wouldn't necessarily accommodate the timeline that you want for my evaluation or that I would want for my evaluation, but once we get into that cycle may actually inform the evaluation in that coming year. And so I would be hesitant to try to readjust that timeline because as we did all these elements with the key performance indicators, that's the time we felt we'd get the best participation, be able to accompany it in the queue, if you would. So I'm okay with that way. I'm okay with incorporating 360 into the evaluation. It's what gives you the best information to evaluate me and then me the best information to improve my performance.
Thank you,
Madam
Dr.
Chair,
Schaefer.
I didn't really think of this as part of Joe's performance evaluation. It's more of an interest, of an instrument to see where we're going with how people view the college and the various groups in it, and in particular administrative groups, and also the president, who's admittedly a unique individual, but it's not really a performance evaluation instrument. So it's...
I was just seeing it as environmental. It sets the scene, so to speak. But I do appreciate that. I think given the timelines, maybe go back and stick with what Cizik was doing there. Do you agree with that?
There are frowns all around the room, and people are trying to figure out what we're talking about here.
I'm one of them.
And I will try to explain one more time.
Right.
What Marty is proposing we do is give us an instrument that enables us to rate our employee.
Right.
That should be our survey. I don't understand why we are bringing other groups from the community into that. That's our evaluation of the president. If we want to know how people feel about how the president is doing and how people on campus feel about administration and their supervisors and things like that, this is perhaps the better way to do that, especially since we have a baseline going back to 2010 that we can compare to.
I'm on board with you.
Okay. Now,
I am too. Thank you for the clarification.
is that explained it better?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then, Madam Chair,
Yes.
the second or third, the 360, we would not ask her to perform, if
That
I'm
is
hearing this
correct.
correctly. And therefore, we save how many dollars?
$450 then, is
$500?
that right?
Something like
The
that.
Rater survey is 950. I think we'd save the 500 for the survey customization. That would, unless we added questions. We'll be using the same questions we used last time, so I'm thinking she wouldn't customize it.
Madam Chair, the only thing I'm going to say here is, and I'd like to hear Dr. Schaefer's comment on this, is because I believe I'm hearing you say you would like that benefit of having the 360.
Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, I value that type of input, and I can solicit that informally, or we can do it formally. I think that the leading and communicating survey actually does provide pretty good feedback, both on how the institution's feeling and doing, and how it's working, and ultimately that's a reflection on my leadership. So I think that tool with those added questions may provide that feedback. So I'm comfortable with the approach that
And when would this be done this year?
would be done this fall
This
of
fall.
2013.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any comments or input from the faculty, staff?
So, could I just,
Yes.
Kevin, you are saying that we should just have this be a trustee evaluation. And Don's agreeing with you and I'm agreeing with you.
And the president rates himself as well,
Well,
like we
yeah.
did last time.
I'm very much that it be, I said that in the very beginning, if you remember.
Yes, I
That
did.
why are we including all these other people?
I think the reason we considered it is that Marty recommended it.
Well.
She thinks that, but we, as a board, can do what we're comfortable with. So, did I have any feedback from those around the walls?
Wallflowers.
Okay, so I would like someone to make a motion, please.
I move that we do the evaluation with Marty, but it'd be strictly for the Board of Trustees and Joe.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. It's unanimous. And Tara, would you like to review any of this? Would you like copies?
I think Joe's gonna send them to me.
I'll send it
Perfect.
to you. I don't know, I
Okay.
can't find them here.
Well, I have copies. We need to after the meeting. We can copy it.
Thank you.
I don't want to embarrass Dr. Schaefer, but I just want to say that I think sending something like this out to the community would be blowing coals for him, because you just hear nothing but the greatest and the greatest and the greatest. And I don't think you need to, well, you know, it'll make him feel good, but that's exactly what'll happen, because you can't talk to anybody around town that they don't appreciate the fact that he is our president.
Thank you, Bill.
And you see, for a skeptic like me, that would suggest it has no probative value.
Trustee Moore, Du Bois, I appreciate your optimism, and Trustee Kilty, I appreciate your cynicism.
Okay, moving on to C, recommendation for approval for depositories of applications of public funds, and that would be Vice President Hoagland.
Thank you, Madam Chair and trustees. Each year, we ask you to approve the list of depositories that we will be using in the coming year as required by Wyoming Statute 9-4-818. The process that the depositories have to go through is to formally file an application with us that has been approved by their boards, that stating that they will cover the securities with public funds, or yeah, that's correct. Will provide securities to cover public funds, so they provide the securities and are registered with the FDIC. And the list before you are the ones that have gone through that process and have asked for their approval of their boards for us to be able to deposit our funds there.
Madam Chairman, I'll move that the list be approved. I just would like to say that having grown up in this community with two banks for the first 30 years of my life, it blows my mind to see how many that there are now 14.
I'll second. And I have a question.
Yes, please.
Carol, is there any maximum amount of deposit that we can put in any one of these banks? Is that somewhat controlled by?
No,
the
there
Fed?
isn't. They just have to insure it at, I think, 102%.
And do we basically spread out all of our funds sort of equally through all these? or-
No, no. We do spread it out, but it's not equally, and it's not with everyone.
And there's some type of formula that is used to determine where we're going to go to one bank as compared to another bank?
Generally has to do with the interest rates that we can earn. We
So you
compa- we
shop?
com- Correct. And we move it if we can get a better interest rate.
Are there any other questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
We did.
I did, and he seconded it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Question.
Yes. All those in favor? Please say aye. Okay, unanimous. We're doing great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have additional items. We don't need to speak about those. They're information only. Next meetings. And then we have new business, of which I have some. What we would like to do, because there will be quite a few of us going to Seattle in October, is we would like to change the October meetings to October 9th and 23rd, which would be the second and fourth Wednesdays. And we also would like to change the November meetings to the 13th and 27th. And we would like to have one meeting in December on the 11th.
Madam Chair, in December, if you had one meeting, wouldn't, I guess I was thinking you would need two there, but maybe not. Okay.
Would you be so kind as to repeat those dates?
Yes, October 9th and 23rd, November 13th and 27th, and December 11th.
I really think that 27th of November is a terrible night. It's the night before Thanksgiving, and lots of people leave town, and it's just not a good night, I don't think.
We checked the calendar and we thought,
Oh, it is. No, he's right.
he's right.
I was with
You
Bill.
are
I thought it was the
absolutely
20.
correct.
I just don't
Yeah.
think it's a good night.
No, it's a terrible night. We thought it was the week later, so, what do you think, Dr. Schaefer?
And we can,
Why are we moving it from the 13th?
because we're bumping the dates in October too.
Yeah, but
So-
maybe we can just catch ourselves back up in November and just call it good.
Sure, maybe we should leave those as they are.
Okay.
Okay, we'll leave those on their original dates.
Which would be the 6th and the 20th, right?
Yes. Thank you for that catch, Bill. And then how about December 11th?
Why the 2nd? Is because of the 4th bad?
No, I think we can probably leave that if you want to hold the two. So you would have then the 4th and the 18th in
Okay.
December. Leave those as is. So it's the October dates, sounds like the ones that would be moved.
Okay,
Okay.
so we're only going to change those. Thank you
And
for
will you
that.
tell me again what they're going to be?
The 9th and the 23rd. Okay, enough for dates changing. I had a letter here from an Ardent and White to Dr. Schaefer. I'll go ahead and read this because it's a glowing report. The GED graduation last Saturday was not only superb, it was the best of many, many I attended. A note of basis, I was a college university faculty person for 32 years, required to attend so many commencements that I believe my database is reasonable. The entire event was well designed and executed. A well done seems appropriate. What made the event superb was the address delivered by the Honorable Justice Michael K. Davis. The way he described himself, then noted other persons with similar histories, thus establishing credibility, and then continued to speak directly to the persons wearing the regalia, and them only, was exquisite. The entire content was both well-crafted and so subtly delivered. Thanks to you and the LCCC folk for the entire event.
Was that
I-
not also in the letters to the editor?
Oh, was it?
There was a
it?
letter to the editor
I didn't
about
see it, but
the graduation.
Madam Chair, I don't know if anyone was looking down at the GED students at the time that the judge made his comment that he was an individual who received a GED. He had them all. He had them from then on. I mean, they may have been just there, but then they were really listening. And then when he starts talking about Bill Cosby and Michael J. Fox also having a GED, it just went, it was fantastic. I agree. One other comment I would make, since we brought up the graduation, it was a tremendous experience for a new trustee to go and see this. But I'll tell you, the seat of my body, is there some possibility of maybe putting some type of cushions on those hard chairs? And I'm serious. Those chairs were absolutely horrible. And especially when you're, in the Civic Center, the people who are participating, like the nurses, they're getting their pinning, or the GED, they're all sitting in nice, comfortable seats. Here we're up squirming around in these hard seats. So if there's any possibility of providing a pad, I'm sorry, but it would be, I think, beneficial for all of the people that have to sit up on the stage.
I think we can find you a whoopee cushion.
we'll
I
take,
don't care. I'll sit on it.
We don't need just a whoopee cushion, we need a little space. I'm kind of broad, axe handles, and those chairs.
I would agree with that. That would be
I
all
felt
the
like I
time.
was on the low-cost airline and shoehorned in.
well, we will take this under advisement and pass it on, and we would also like some monitors so that the people in back of the podium could actually hear what is being said at the podium. We're going to take that under advisement as well. But I want to say it was an amazingly inspirational day, and the Sage Trio graduation was amazing as well. The physical therapist assistants graduated Friday night, and I loved it all. So.
There wasn't a one of them that wasn't just great to attend. They really are. And the only thing I would hope we could do, and faculty in different areas are able to do this, and I would argue even in the business area, I can think back and we were challenged by it also. But if you look in some of the cohort programs, although it's dropped off a little bit, all of the equine people used to go through, and all the nurses would go through and stuff. And when you see the full graduation, we're down a bit in terms of those who participate. And there are obvious reasons for that. But I would hope that faculty and staff could maybe help give some incentive for people to go through and have that celebration of their success.
Thank you, Ed. Is there any other new business? If not, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Here we go. Got it done before 10.